Sharon brings a wallet to her deliverman boyfriend Kyle at the party. Before even entering, she overhears her boyfriend's best friend Manfred ask, "Kyle, are you still with that horse trainer girl?" Don't blame me for reminding you. Elizabeth is coming back in a few days. Stop fooling around and get serious." Through the door crack, Sharon sees her boyfriend Kyle wearing a designer suit she's never seen before, aloof and noble, his innate aristocratic aura effortless. Kyle replied nonchalantly, "Got it." Manfred noticed Kyle's indifferent expression and added, "It's been 5 years already, aren't you tired of it? That horse trainer still doesn't know you're from the Marshall family, does she? Be careful she doesn't fleece you for all you're worth once she finds out. Money's no object." Marshall family. Sharon held her breath, then took out her phone and dialed Kyle's number. "Kyle, let's break up. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins." Two voices rang out simultaneously. Kyle turned to meet Sharon's gaze, his eyes filled with astonishment. "Sharon, what are you doing here?" Sharon shook her peeling wallet. "Worried you'd have no money for food, so I came to bring you some." Kyle resumed his usual cold, stern expression. "You heard everything just now." Sharon nodded without denial. "Kyle, was it fun to toy with me?" Just as she entered the glamour nightclub, she heard the DJ announce loudly, "Tonight's expenses are on the house by Mr. Kyle in VIP booth 1. At that moment, she was standing right outside VIP booth 1. Little did she know that her delivery boy boyfriend was the Mr. Kyle the DJ had mentioned. "Not bad at all." Kyle flashed a roguish smile. Sharon sneered, "How pitiful, the Mr. Kyle who'd spend a fortune on strangers, yet pretends to be some penniless nobody in front of me." "Sharon, you could have just played along. I would have treated you well." With his cover blown, Kyle couldn't even be bothered to keep up the act. Sharon let out a mocking laugh. She placed the wallet in her hand on Kyle's desk. "I don't need it." Sharon turned and walked away. Kyle sat on the leather sofa, his expression unreadable. Sharon returned home and stared at the circled date on the calendar, December 12th, their 5th anniversary. She had been looking forward to it since yesterday. The moment she got off work today, she bought groceries and cooked a table full of dishes. Now they've gone cold. Thinking of everything that happened today, she dumped all those dishes into the trash bin. 5 years ago today, Kyle wore a food delivery rider's uniform and confessed his feelings to her with flowers. "Sharon, I like you. Will you be with me?" Back then, the nervousness in his eyes was so unmistakable, yet Sharon only noticed the sincere love in his eyes. Rejecting countless wealthy suitors who pursued her, and agreed to be with him, little did she know, he had been deceiving her all these 5 years. Sharon took out the frosty, mist-covered liquor from the fridge, downing one glass after another. She had no idea how much time had passed. She got up, took a shower, and lay down on the bed. Only then did she feel like she had come back to life. Then she fell into a deep sleep. The next day, Sharon saw as soon as she woke up Kyle sitting on the leather sofa with his legs crossed, a crimson glow at his lips, cigarette butts scattered all over the floor. Normally, Sharon would have taken the cigarette from his hand, then she smiled and reminded him to smoke less. But now Sharon had little patience for him. "What are you doing here?" Kyle flicked the ash from his cigarette and said, "How you've treated me these 5 years, I've seen it all. I'll have my assistant transfer you some money. Consider it compensation for all these years." For these 5 years, Sharon never once looked down on Kyle for making ends meet by delivering takeout. She felt that as long as one of the two could earn money, it was enough. Kyle, when he had no money, she didn't look down on him, and when he had money, it didn't make her think any higher of him. Now, Kyle made her feel like the 5-year relationship she had clung to was nothing but a joke. Then Sharon's phone received a notification. "Your bank card has received a transfer of 50,000,000 yuan, 50 million. That's their 5 years, 10 million a year. Mr. Kyle is certainly generous with his money." Sharon stared at the text notification on her phone, bitterness welling in her heart as a mocking smile curled at the corner of her lips. Kyle had never seen such an aggressive Sharon before, to the point where he almost forgot that Sharon was the most skilled horse trainer in all of City J, and had turned down nearly half the heirs in the wealthy elite circle. Sharon felt her heart grow colder by the inch. She pointed to the side bedroom. "Young master, if you're done playing, clean up your things, they're just in the way otherwise." With that, Sharon ignored Kyle, washed up, got ready, and left for work. She arrived at the Western Hills Equestrian Center. Sharon led out a horse named Saxon and began working, riding for a short while. The horse's owner, ZX Group's president Ronald, arrived. He was dressed in riding attire, tall and slender. Sharon spotted Ronald, dismounted, and walked over. "Mr. Ronald, here to ride." "Saxon is almost fully trained now, very well behaved. Would you like to give it a try?" Ronald smiled as he pulled the reins, shaking his head when he felt the horse resist. "It's still resisting." Sharon laughed. A good horse always has some temper. Once tamed, it can be ridden. Ronald shook his head. This is a Fergana horse. It will only recognize one master in its lifetime. Affection grows with time. You just haven't ridden enough. How about I lead you around for a couple of laps first? Sharon patted the white horse's neck, and the animal seemed to understand, kneeling down obediently. Ronald was taken aback but refused. How embarrassing. What kind of sight would it be for a man to sit on a horse being led by a girl? Sharon burst into laughter upon hearing this. You bought a $3 million Ackelteak without hesitation, yet Mr. Ronald doesn't want to experience it for himself. Ronald gazed at Sharon with a profound smile, his eyes deep and unreadable. You know, that wasn't why I bought it. Sharon froze in surprise. Ronald couldn't help but add, I heard your boyfriend is Marshall Family's Asia-Pacific CEO Kyle. You, before he could finish, Sharon cut him off. He's not my boyfriend anymore, he's my ex, changing the subject. The two chatted for a while longer. Ronald had just left when Sharon led the horse back to the track and overheard a group of wealthy socialites chatting on horseback nearby. Elizabeth, you probably don't know this yet, but that horse trainer Sharon is quite something. She's got a delivery guy boyfriend, yet she's always flirting with this one and that one. Half the social circle is utterly bewitched by her. Look, now she's even hooked up with ZX Group's president Ronald. Men just can't resist her type, cold as ice on the surface, but a real temptress underneath. Have you guys noticed? Sharon's delivery boyfriend didn't come to pick her up yesterday. Didn't he used to come every day? Who knows? Maybe they broke up. After all, a gold digger like her never lasts long with anyone. Sharon frowned slightly, and leading Saxon. She looked at those women. Could you please clean up your mouths? One woman chuckled. What? You dare to do it but are afraid of people talking about it. At this moment, the woman, whom these socialites called Elizabeth, spoke. She pointed at the white horse Sharon was leading. I want to ride this horse. Sharon was taken aback and explained. This horse was trained by me for Mr. Ronald. Currently, Saxon is only close to me. I'm sorry, but you cannot ride it. I've been practicing horseback riding since childhood. No need for your concern. Elizabeth went straight up to Sharon, mounted the horse in one swift motion. Sharon couldn't stop her and trotted after her. Madam, you ride this horse at your own risk. Elizabeth smirked disdainfully, gave a higher, and rode Saxon off into the distance. At this very moment, Saxon suddenly reared up on its hind legs and began galloping at breakneck speed. Elizabeth lost her balance and was thrown off the horse. Before she could react, she saw the horse's hooves coming straight for her chest. All traces of her earlier defiance vanished from her face as she screamed, "Help!" Fortunately, Sharon had been prepared. She grabbed Saxon's reins and skillfully calmed the horse with practiced movements until it settled down. It was at this moment that a familiar voice rang out. Elizabeth, are you all right? Sharon looked in the direction of the voice and saw Kyle, who had appeared out of nowhere. Scoop Elizabeth off the ground. At the same time, Elizabeth's friends ran over and pushed Sharon away. Sharon, what kind of horse have you trained? You made our Elizabeth fall off, and she's the eldest daughter of the Liu family. Can you even afford to take responsibility for this? Sharon replied matter-of-factly. This horse is notoriously wild. Currently, only I and Mr. Ronald are somewhat familiar with it. But this MS, Elizabeth insisted on riding it, so she fell off. How is that my fault? Kyle frowned slightly upon hearing this. Sharon, as a professional horse trainer, you actually let someone fall off a horse. Apologize to Elizabeth right now, or don't even think about staying in this industry. Elizabeth, the two words came out of Kyle's mouth. Almost instantly, Sharon recalled what Kyle's friend Manfred had said to Kyle yesterday. Elizabeth will be back in a few days. Stop messing around and get your act together. So she was Elizabeth. The woman who could make Kyle settle down. Sharon let out a cold laugh. She insisted on riding it. I warned her long ago I won't apologize. No matter what, I'm still a VIP guest at this stable. Your horse made me fall, and you can't even say sorry. Elizabeth frowned, her eyes brimming with tears as if she had suffered an unbearable injustice. I told you about this horse, it's not for riding. You brought this on yourself. Kyle, his eyes darkened with suppressed anger. Yet he still spoke gently to Elizabeth, saying, Elizabeth, let me take you to the lounge first. Due to work requirements, Sharon had no choice but to bring the on-site doctor along. They arrived at the lounge entrance. Sharon overheard Kyle ask, wasn't your flight on the 15th? Why did you suddenly return? And why come to West Mountain Ranch? Elizabeth sidestepped the question lightly. Kyle, are you happy that I came back early? Kyle couldn't help smiling, of course. You have no idea how much I've missed you these 5 years you were in America. Sharon finally understood upon hearing these words why Kyle had endless phone calls every morning during their 5 years together. There's exactly a 12-hour time difference between America and City J. Sharon led the resident doctor in and said, MS, Elizabeth, this is the resident doctor. You can tell him about any discomfort you're feeling. Elizabeth glanced at Sharon without saying a word. Kyle said coldly. Not needed, get out. Sharon, upon hearing this, had the doctor stay while she walked out. In the evening, after work, Sharon took the bus home and saw Kyle standing not far away as she approached the building. You'll go apologize to Elizabeth tomorrow. Kyle parted his thin lips. Another apology. Sharon stepped forward. How do you want me to apologize? Should I kneel before her? Kyle had never seen a woman as stubborn as Sharon. Sharon, stop being unreasonable. You're the one who hurt her. And all she's asking for is an apology. Is that too much to ask? What? Did I hold a knife to her throat and force her to ride the horse? Sharon retorted word by word, staring at his cold, stern face. Kyle choked back his words. With a cold laugh, he dropped his final remark and turned to leave. Fine, if you won't apologize. Don't regret it later. Watching him drive away in the luxury car, Sharon wearily returned home. The phone rang, and when she picked it up, she saw it was a call from her mother. Mom, what's up, sweetheart? The new year is almost here. Are you coming back this year? Her mother asked cautiously over the phone. Sharon held her breath. Mom, I'll come home in a while. After a brief silence on the phone, the voice continued. Sweetheart, your dad asked me to tell you. He doesn't object to you bringing that food delivery boyfriend of yours anymore. You can bring him home with you this year. Span. Sharon clutched her phone tightly. Counting the days, she realized she hadn't gone home for Chinese New Year in 3 years. It was because 3 years ago she told her parents she was dating a delivery guy. After learning about Kyle's family background, her parents disapproved and ordered them to break up. But at that time, Kyle treated Sharon very well. Sharon refused. On New Year's Day, in a fit of anger, she returned to City J and never went back, although they occasionally kept in touch. She and Dad had been at odds for a long time. Sharon said calmly, Mom, we've already broken up. There was silence on the phone for a moment, then suddenly Dad's voice came through. Breaking up is good, sweetheart. Don't be sad. Dad will introduce you to someone better when the time comes. You don't know, but the son of Dad's business partner is handsome, wealthy, and most importantly, talented. He graduated from an Ivy League school, and his family is well established. Isn't that much better than that poor boy of yours? Sharon remained silent for a moment before responding without refusal. We'll see when the time comes. After returning home, Sharon took a shower, washing away her exhaustion, then sank into a deep sleep as soon as she lay in bed. The next morning, as she went to work as usual, she received a termination letter instead. The manager gave her a sympathetic look. Don't offend those you shouldn't in the future. You've angered Mr. Kyle. He acquired the ranch yesterday, and his first order was to fire you. Sharon showed no surprise upon hearing this and nodded in response. I understand. Sharon clutched the termination letter as she left the manager's office, pretending not to be upset would be a lie. She had spent 6 years at Shishan Equestrian Center. Every horse here felt like one of her own children. Sharon went to the stable, fed the horses hay one last time, and as she walked out the door, she encountered Ronald, dressed in casual clothes, also coming to feed the horses. Mr. Ronald, what brings you here? I came to check on things. Are you heading out? Sharon gave a bitter smile. No, I've been fired. So sudden. Do you want me to step in and help? Ronald asked. Sharon shook her head. No need, it's not a big deal. There's more than one ranch in City J. Then let me give you a ride. Sharon glanced at Ronald's car parked not far away and didn't refuse. Then I'll trouble you for it. After getting in the car, Ronald couldn't help but ask, Sharon, what are your plans next? Sharon was momentarily stunned by how he addressed her. Nothing concrete yet. I'll figure it out after the new year, Ronald asked. May I privately hire you as Saxon's horse trainer? Under Ronald's expectant gaze, Sharon hesitated. I'll think about it. They soon arrived at the neighborhood entrance. After seeing off Ronald, Sharon turned around, only to meet a pair of eyes as deep and cold as a frozen pool. Kyle, dressed in a brown trench coat, stood aloof and dignified at a distance, quietly gazing at Sharon. What is your relationship with ZX Group's Mr. Ronald? Sharon glared at him coldly. Do I need to explain my relationship with Mr. Ronald to you, Mr. Kyle? Kyle frowned slightly upon hearing the words Mr. Kyle. He stepped forward and grabbed Sharon's hand. Ronald is not a good person. You'd better stay away from him. And what gives you the right to say that to me, as my ex-boyfriend? Kyle choked. Meanwhile, Sharon shook off his hand and went home. After resting at home for a day, Sharon received another call from Ronald the next day, inviting her to dinner. Sharon thought it over and agreed. 7 p.m., Reese Restaurant. Sharon walked in to find Ronald, dressed in a well-tailored suit, waiting for her. Sorry I'm late. No problem, I arrived early. Ronald looked at Sharon with a glimmer in his eyes as he gallantly pulled out her chair. During the gathering, Ronald asked her, Sharon, have you thought about what I asked you the day before yesterday? Would you like to become Saxon's horse trainer? Sharon pondered for a moment before replying. I just lost my job recently and would like to take a good rest. Could we discuss this later, Mr. Ronald? Of course we can, Ronald continued. Actually, your breakup with Kyle is for the best. Everyone in our circle knows that Kyle and Elizabeth were engaged since childhood, and their marriage was just a matter of course. Does everyone in the circle know? Sharon nodded absent-mindedly, barely tasting her food, as the moonlight deepened after dinner. Sharon went to wait for Ronald at the entrance, and from afar saw Kyle helping Elizabeth step out of a black Bentley. Their gazes met. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow at Sharon, her eyes brimming with undisguised contempt. If it isn't Sharon, eating alone here. Haven't seen you at the stables these past few days. Sharon smiled calmly. I have Mr. Kyle to thank for that. He granted me quite an extended vacation. Kyle frowned slightly upon hearing this. Elizabeth continued, Sharon. Would you like to join us for dinner? After all, you and Kyle were once acquainted. Sharon curled her lips slightly and shook her head. No need, I just finished eating with a friend. I wouldn't want to intrude on your evening. Kyle showed a trace of surprise in his eyes. Who is this friend of yours, in the capital? He had never seen Sharon with any friends. Sharon coldly glanced at Kyle. Mr. Kyle, this is none of your business. At that moment, Ronald, dressed in a suit, walked over and was also taken aback upon seeing Kyle and Elizabeth. Then he smiled politely and said, Mr. Kyle, Elizabeth, what a coincidence. Long time no see, Mr. Ronald, it's been a while. Ronald smiled and patted Sharon's head. By the way, what were you talking about with our girlfriend? Girlfriend, you two sure move fast. Kyle's gaze grew colder by the second, his emotions unreadable. Not long now, I pursued her for ages. But luckily she broke up with her boyfriend, finally gave me an opening, Ronald said meaningfully. Kyle's expression darkened. Sharon turned to look at Ronald and noticed a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. It's getting late, Mr. Kyle, Elizabeth will take our leave now. Enjoy your meal. Ronald wrapped his arm around Sharon's waist and said softly, let's go. Elizabeth and Kyle stood still with complex expressions. In the car, Sharon looked gratefully at Ronald. Thank you for helping me out just now, Ronald smiled gently, glancing meaningfully through the rearview mirror. Sharon, that wasn't just helping out, it's what I genuinely wanted. Sharon froze. Then after a long silence, she spoke slowly. I just broke up. I don't want to rush into another relationship. I understand. Let's start as friends first. Ronald interrupted her. Sharon nodded at last, gazing out the window. Streetlights receded one by one as withered leaves fell, returning home. Sharon received a package. Just as she wondered who'd sent it, her father called. Sweetheart, my old squad leader's celebrating his 70th birthday the day after tomorrow. I mailed him a gift, raw jade from the new North Mountain veins, excellent texture and color. Since you're in City J, deliver it for me. After asking for the address, Sharon replied, all right, I'll deliver it for you. 3 days later, the Marshall family's old residence. Sharon had just stepped out of the car when she encountered Elizabeth and her best friend Flora. Elizabeth paused upon seeing her, frowned, and said, what are you doing here? Sharon said calmly, I was entrusted to deliver birthday gifts to Mr. Marshall. Elizabeth's best friend Flora sneered, oh, what kind of gift-giving is this? How could Mr. Marshall possibly have any connection with someone like you? Rejected by Mr. Kyle, so now you're trying to seduce his grandfather, Mr. Kyle. Grandfather, Sharon froze. First, she never expected that her father's old squad leader would turn out to be Kyle's grandfather. Second, Mr. Marshall is now over 70 years old. How could they possibly say such things? Sharon stepped forward and immediately slapped Flora. If you keep spouting nonsense, don't blame me for suing you for slander. Flora froze. As Elizabeth stepped forward, shielding her best friend while glaring coldly at Sharon, she said, Manfred told me everything. The only reason Kyle got together with you was because of a 5,000 bet. Kyle never liked you at all. Elizabeth mentioned Manfred, who was Kyle's close friend. A 50 million bet. Sharon suddenly remembered that day 5 years ago when she agreed to be with Kyle. Unexpectedly saw Kyle's phone receive a message, a bet's a bet. 50 million has been transferred to your card. At the time, he explained it was a scam text. Turns out it was this. Just then, Kyle, dressed in a well-tailored suit, walked out of the old mansion. He paused momentarily upon seeing Sharon, then stepped forward to take Elizabeth's hand. Elizabeth, what's wrong? Elizabeth gave Sharon a provocative glance upon hearing this. Kyle, your ex-girlfriend is here to see you. With that, she seemed to storm off into the old house in a jealous huff. Only then did Kyle turn his gaze to Sharon, his eyes filled with disdain. What are you doing here? Sharon wanted to tell him she was there to celebrate his grandfather's birthday, but he continued speaking. Didn't you already climb to a higher branch? What, Ronald can't satisfy you, so you regret it now? Kyle spoke with words sharp as knives, spat out one final word, then turned and left. Get lost. Meanwhile, Sharon stood frozen in place, with the voices of Flora and several socialite girls gossiping behind her. Did you hear that, mister? Kyle told you to get lost. What shameless behavior. I think you're not a horse trainer, but a trainer of men. Riding horses every day must make her different from us in that regard. Sharon frowned slightly at these words. Not wanting to cause a scene at her father's old squad leader's birthday, she could only choose to endure it. Just as she was about to enter the old house, she was stopped again by those socialite girls. Move aside, mister. Kyle already told you to get lost, yet you still want to go in. Have you no shame? Just as Sharon was about to reveal her identity, a butler in a tailcoat approached Sharon and said respectfully, Ms. Sharon, Mr. Marshall requests your presence. Sharon followed the butler to the study under the astonished gazes of several socialites. As soon as she entered, she saw an elderly man dressed in a Zhongshan suit. So you're old Paul's daughter. You've grown so big already, Sharon nodded. Since my father has difficulty walking but still deeply misses you, I came on his behalf to deliver this gift. I hope you'll like it. Mr. Marshall eyes brimmed with kindness. You're the spitting image of your father. Back in the day, he was the finest soldier under my command, though he had to retire due to injury. How has your father been keeping lately? He's doing quite well, thank you for asking. Sharon replied respectfully. Mr. Marshall said with a smile, I have a grandson about your age. I'll introduce you to someday. Sharon agreed with a smile, though in her heart she knew that opportunity would never come. After chatting a while longer, Sharon excused herself and left, dragging her exhausted body home. Sharon opened the door and saw Kyle sitting on the living room sofa with his legs crossed, illuminated by the faint moonlight from the window. Sharon was taken aback and asked, What are you doing here? Kyle darkened his gaze. I thought you weren't coming home tonight. Sharon frowned as she turned on the light. What does it matter to you whether I come home or not? Kyle stood up and advanced step by step toward Sharon, pinning her against the wall with a look full of aggression. Sharon, I've slept with you for so long, so I'm kindly reminding you, Ronald has a fiancé. His liking for you now is just a passing fancy. You'd better know your place, lest you be the one crying in the end. Sharon was stunned, not expecting Ronald to also have a fiancé, but then she thought, how many rich second-generation heirs are truly faithful these days? Sharon felt an inexplicable surge of anger. Kyle, what right do you have to talk about him? You two are birds of a feather. Nothing else. Now get out, Sharon said, then turned and went back into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. Sharon tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Not knowing when Kyle had left, she finally fell asleep, only to dream of the very beginning of her relationship with Kyle. That year, the winter in City J was very cold. She fell off a wild horse while trying to tame it. That night, she developed a high fever, and while she was delirious, a pair of gentle hands picked her up and took her to the hospital. Kyle cared for her in the hospital for 3 days and 3 nights. The doctors and nurses all said they had never seen such a gentle and considerate man. She thought Kyle loved her deeply. She believed they were in love, so she gave all her love to Kyle. She was even willing to stay forever in City J for him, even if it meant an ordinary life. But she never imagined it was all a lie. When she woke up again, Sharon's forehead was covered in cold sweat. She wanted to go out for a horse ride to clear her head. Deliberately avoiding the West Mountain stables where she used to work, it took nearly 2 hours to drive to the north of the city. However, as soon as she changed into her riding gear and mounted her horse, she ran into Elizabeth and Kyle. Sharon was about to leave when Elizabeth stopped her. Ms. Sharon, I hear that horse trainers are top-notch riders. How about we have a competition today? Sharon glanced at Kyle, then looked at Elizabeth. How do you want to compete? Elizabeth smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. We'll race to see who can ride their horse around the track 10 times first. Whoever loses has to run 3 laps around the equestrian field, shouting I'm a slut the whole time. How does that sound? I'm a slut. Interesting, Sharon said with a faint smile. Sure. She had grown up on horseback and had never been afraid of anyone when it came to riding. What if you back out? Elizabeth's eyes flashed with a hint of cunning at the question. Whoever goes back on their word is a dog. Sharon turned her gaze to Kyle. Mr. Kyle, you wouldn't let your girlfriend become a dog, would you? Kyle, having dated Sharon for 5 years, knew her capabilities well. He lowered his voice and said to Elizabeth, Elizabeth, she's the top female horse trainer, you can't beat her. Elizabeth tightened her grip on the reins. Kyle, we've both won back what's ours. It's just horse racing. How could I possibly lose to a horse trainer? Sharon laughed upon hearing this. Elizabeth, I need to tell you something. It was me who left him, not the other way around. Enough nonsense. Let's race. Whoever loses is the trash-talking bitch. As Elizabeth finished speaking, The surrounding crowd waited eagerly to witness the spectacle. The staff led out 2 horses, a black blood horse and a white decorative horse. The white one was given to Sharon, while the black one went to Elizabeth. The crowd shook their heads. How could an ordinary white horse possibly outrun a black blood horse? Sure enough, at the command, Elizabeth's dark horse shot forward like an arrow from a bow. Meanwhile, Sharon's white horse lowered its head to graze, refusing to move at all. The spectators in the stands burst into laughter. And she calls herself a horse trainer, her own horse won't even listen to her. After completing a full lap, Elizabeth deliberately stopped right in front of Sharon. Little bitch, why won't your horse obey you? I really don't know what Kyle saw in you during the 5 years I was away. You're nothing special, as far as I can see. With that, she cracked her whip, and the horse surged forward. As for Sharon, she couldn't care less. Soon enough, it'd be clear who the real bitch was. She looked at her white horse. In truth, this was no ordinary white horse, but an untamed Ackelteek, said to be the very steed Lou Bu once rode. This horse was none other than Red Hair. Sharon kept training the horse to circle, yet it still stomped its hooves restlessly. Sharon stroked its neck until it calmed. A fine drizzle began to fall from the sky. The rain fell on Sharon, by which time Elizabeth was already 3 laps ahead of her. Sharon said with a smile, "Good horse, if you help me win today, I'll buy you and take you home. I have several grasslands at home. So you can eat and run freely then. You're a dignified Red Hair. Can't you even outrun an ordinary horse?" Gradually, Sharon felt she could handle the horse. Only then did she give the command to run. With a gentle tug on the reins, the steed leaped forward and charged ahead, like a bolt of lightning. The audience and Kyle watched as Sharon's petite figure, riding just an ordinary white horse, overtook Elizabeth and crossed the finish line first. The moment she crossed the line, the stands erupted in cheers. Meanwhile, Elizabeth stared in disbelief at Sharon's retreating back. How is this possible?" Sharon pulled the reins, turning her horse to look down at Elizabeth with a triumphant smirk. "Don't forget our bet, you pathetic wretch." Elizabeth turned pale instantly upon hearing this. She never imagined that her intention to embarrass Sharon would backfire so spectacularly. Now, the embarrassment had fallen upon herself instead. At that moment, Kyle walked over from the spectator stands, holding an umbrella. "Sharon, don't go too far. As a horse trainer, riding is naturally your expertise. Don't you think you're being unreasonable?" Sharon, upon hearing his words, recalled her own disheveled state during the competition earlier. "Am I being unreasonable? Kyle, have you ever considered how she would treat me if I were the one who lost today?" Kyle was taken aback, then replied, "Elizabeth, she can be a bit willful. But I believe she wouldn't make things difficult for you." "A bit willful?" Sharon let out a cold laugh and turned to Elizabeth. "It seems Elizabeth doesn't want to be a bitch, she's dead set on being a dog instead." At this moment, Elizabeth's best friend Flora said, "Let's race again. It must be the horse's fault." "Switch horses." Elizabeth's eyes lit up at these words. "Yes, it must be the horse," she agreed. "Otherwise, how could she lose when she was so far ahead?" "Right, let's race again." "We'll switch horses," Sharon responded coldly. "Fine, you can ride this horse, just don't blame me if you fall later." Elizabeth immediately dared not approach that horse, because before the competition, she had specifically arranged for a particularly wild and lazy white horse to be given to Sharon. Who would have thought Sharon could actually tame it? Kyle's face darkened. Aren't all the horses at the ranch already trained? How could it throw someone off? Sharon looked at Elizabeth. "You'll have to ask your sore loser fiancé about that, Mr. Kyle. I am not a sore loser." Elizabeth blushed deeply. "Then explain about the racetrack." "You're a bitch," Sharon said word by word. Elizabeth clenched her fists, glaring viciously at Sharon. Speechless, Sharon, drenched from head to toe, had no desire to engage. "Goodbye, puppy." Just outside the stable entrance, she bumped into Ronald in his tailored suit. "Sharon, why haven't you been answering my calls lately?" Sharon saw him and immediately thought of Kyle's words that he already had a fiancé. Frowning slightly, she spoke bluntly, "Mr. Ronald, though I'm just a horse trainer, I don't like being the other woman. Don't you have a fiancé? Be good to her." Ronald was visibly taken aback by her words. "Sharon, I can explain," Sharon interrupted him. "No need, Mr. Ronald. I'll be leaving City J soon and going home. This hypocritical place, she would never return." Ronald froze. "Will you come back?" Sharon didn't answer him, because it was meaningless. After returning home, Sharon received a call from her father. "Sweetheart, our private jet has been cleared. When are you coming home?" Sharon pondered over recent events after hearing this. "I'll return tomorrow." As soon as the call ended, Sharon received a call from Kyle's best friend Manfred. "Sharon, come quickly to room 101 at Jushin Entertainment. Kyle got into a fight and something happened." Sharon frowned slightly upon hearing this. "If something happened to him, why call me instead of Elizabeth? Just come." With that, Manfred hung up the phone, thinking of their 5 years together. Sharon finally stepped out the door. She had just arrived at the private room entrance. Sharon heard the sound of a group of people talking in the private room. Elizabeth said to the crowd, "I'm going to make Sharon pay for what happened yesterday." Kyle asked, "Elizabeth, what price will you make her pay?" Elizabeth said with a dark expression, "An eye for an eye." Someone suggested, "How about making Sharon go live and call herself a bitch?" Elizabeth's best friend Flora spoke up, "That's not nearly enough." Then Elizabeth said word by word, "Kyle, I want you to personally get Sharon drunk later. I've hired 10 men to serve her. After they're done, I want her to say 1,000 times that she's a bitch. Then throw her into the river to feed the fish." Kyle couldn't believe his ears. "That's going too far." Elizabeth, seeing his reluctance, spoke with a trembling voice. "Kyle, you used to promise me the stars from the sky. Now I just want to deal with that wretched woman, and you refuse. Have you fallen for Sharon?" "Falling for Sharon." Kyle ignored the unease in his heart and instinctively replied, How could I love a horse trainer? Elizabeth, you're the only one I love. Being with her is just for fun." Elizabeth stared straight at him. "Then help me. I want to ruin her reputation and make her the laughingstock of everyone." Elizabeth teared up. "Kyle, she stole you from me for 5 years. These 5 years you spent with her are my shame. I'll make her disappear completely." "Exactly, Kyle. Back in the day, if anyone dared lay a finger on Elizabeth, you wouldn't even blink before tossing them into the river to feed the fish. What's gotten into you lately?" Kyle remained silent for a moment, then Wanda spoke up. "Kyle, don't worry. Everyone knows their limits. We're just avenging Elizabeth. We won't actually play her to death. Someone will jump in to save her when the time comes." Kyle then whispered softly, "Okay." Sharon stood at the door listening to this, her hands trembling as she dialed her father's number. "Dad, can you come over early? Something's happened here." After explaining the situation to her father, she finally hung up the phone. Then Sharon pushed the door open and went inside. She looked at Kyle in the center of the crowd and said, "Didn't something happen to you?" Kyle met Sharon's gaze, inexplicably feeling a bit guilty. "Come here, I have something to tell you." "What is it?" Kyle gazed at her tenderly. "Let's get back together. Actually, during these 5 years with you, I've realized I've fallen for you." Sharon laughed through tears as if she had heard some joke. "Are you sure? Your childhood sweetheart is still sitting right beside you." Kyle gazed at Sharon's smile, finding it somewhat blinding. He turned to Elizabeth and said, "Elizabeth, I don't love you anymore. The one I love is Sharon." Elizabeth's eyes reddened upon hearing this. Sharon watched the scene, thinking the performance seemed almost genuine. A pang of sorrow struck her heart. This was the man she had loved for 5 years. She took the opportunity to say to Kyle, "Kyle, I've never liked anyone before. You're the first." Everyone cheered. "Sister-in-law," in such a great atmosphere. "Won't you have a drink?" "I'll toast sister-in-law. I'll toast sister-in-law." Soon, Sharon had a row of drinks lined up before her. Sharon looked at the drinks in front of her. "Kyle, are you sure you want me to drink these?" Kyle lowered his gaze, avoiding eye contact with her. "We'll drink together. If you get drunk later, we'll take you home." "Exactly, sis-in-law." Sharon sneered inwardly. She walked forward, picked up a few glasses of wine, and the liquor tasted particularly bitter as it went down her throat. She grew up on the prairie and had a high tolerance for alcohol since childhood. These few drinks wouldn't even faze her. But now, as she pretended to be drunk and slowly closed her eyes, she heard Kyle instruct, "Remember, don't kill her," Elizabeth said indifferently. "Got it. This little bitch is really sentimental, thinking that our kind of circle would actually accept and like her." The few people accompanying Kyle threw Sharon by the river and then returned to their car in the distance. Sharon slowly opened her eyes only after they had completely left. Surrounding her were 10 men, cameras in hand, approaching her step by step, with malicious smiles playing on their lips. "We heard you're a horse whisperer. How about you train us men?" Sharon's eyes were hollow as she remained silent. At that moment, a group of bodyguards rushed out of the darkness, pinning all 10 men to the ground. The leader approached Sharon and said respectfully, "Young miss." Just then, Sharon's father arrived before her with his cane, asking with concern, "Are you all right, my child?" "Dad, I'm fine." The old man then turned his gaze to the 10 men being pinned to the ground by bodyguards. "Who sent you? How dare you harm my daughter? Someone throw them all into the river to feed the fish." Hearing this, the 10 men knelt and begged for mercy. "No, please. We were all acting on the orders of the Liu family's second young miss. This wasn't our doing." Sharon stopped the bodyguard's movement and walked up to those people. "I can spare your lives. In 1 hour, go back and report that you've completed everything, that you've thrown me into the river. Then take today's events to your graves, understand?" The 10 men hastily nodded in agreement. Sharon watched their retreating figures and said to her father, "Dad, let's go. Kyle, just die in your world. We will never see each other again in this life." Sharon helped her father onto the plane. On the other side, inside the extended Lincoln limousine, Kyle's friends were playing cards and chatting. Elizabeth, make sure to save me a copy of that video later. I can't wait to see how shameless this Sharon is going to be later. Elizabeth laughed upon hearing this and said, "Of course you can," Flora said. "I want in too. I'll upload it online and ruin her reputation. Let her learn the consequences of crossing our Elizabeth." The group chatted on, laughing and joking without pause. Kyle listened to it all, but an inexplicable restlessness stirred in his heart. He got up to get off the car and look for Sharon, but was stopped by Elizabeth. "You're not allowed to look for her. If you go, I won't be with you anymore." Kyle stood still in place. Finally, an hour later, the 10 men stumbled their way to the Lincoln car. Kyle got out of the car and scanned the area, but saw no sign of Sharon. The unease in his heart grew stronger. He grabbed one of the men by the collar and demanded, "Where's Sharon?" The man lowered his head and replied, "That woman was too tempting. After we finished with her, we followed Miss Luer's orders, killed her and dumped her body in the river. By now, she's probably fish food." Kyle stiffened at the words, his pupils dilating in shock, his face a mask of disbelief. He immediately rushed to the riverbank. The calm water surface showed no trace of Sharon. Kyle felt an unprecedented surge of panic and immediately ordered people to search for Sharon. "Go find Sharon now. If you fail, I'll have your heads." At this moment, the person Kyle had sent underwater surfaced and said, "Mr. Kyle, we found Sharon's shoe. The currents are strong tonight. Who knows where she might have been swept away by now." Kyle stepped forward and took Sharon's shoe. A dull ache throbbed in his heart. He tried to speak several times but no sound came out, as if a lump of cotton were stuck in his throat. After a long silence, he spoke slowly, "Keep searching. If she's alive, I want to see her. If she's dead, I want to see the body." The bitter wind wantonly tousled Kyle's stray hairs across his forehead. Clutching Sharon's shoe tightly, his lifeless eyes remained fixed on the river surface like stagnant pools. Time passed minute by minute, as the search and rescue team members dove down and resurfaced. Kyle's heart gradually sank to the depths. He thought of many things, the bet he'd made, the night Sharon had agreed to it, how he'd been so happy he couldn't sleep the entire night. He thought of the first time he'd seen Sharon. She stood before a rebellious, untamed stallion. Clad in a form-fitting black riding outfit that accentuated her toned muscles and graceful figure, a black riding crop in hand, she faced the massive creature without a trace of timidity, exuding not the slightest hint of fragility. Every gesture exudes nothing but ambition, the ambition to conquer a wild horse. From Sharon's very first appearance, Kyle's gaze was completely fixed on her, never to stray again. Even now, he remembers it all too clearly. Perhaps he was engrossed in watching her. Manfred, who was beside him, whispered, introducing her background, "She's Sharon, the new horse trainer recently hired by the stable. I heard she graduated from a top-tier university, has a great figure, and is exceptionally beautiful. Many rich second-generation guys in our circle are pursuing her, but I heard she's rejected them all. She probably isn't someone who bows to money." Kyle pulled his thoughts back and chuckled. "Doesn't like money. Interesting." Manfred nudged Kyle's arm upon hearing this. "What, are you interested? I heard she's very proud. The men in our circle don't even catch her eye." Kyle remained silent, the corners of his lips curling into an enigmatic smile. "Within 3 months. I'll definitely win her over." Manfred burst out laughing. "Come on, Mr. Kyle, you, chasing someone. It's always been others throwing themselves at you. Now you're telling me you're going to pursue someone. Don't make me laugh. Do you even know how to charm a woman?" Kyle gazed at the figure below the stage without speaking. Manfred, seeing him serious, suddenly got excited. 50 million. I bet you can't win her over." Kyle raised an eyebrow and said. "Plus that piece of land in the north of the city." He wanted to see just how proud this woman was. Manfred was taken aback. "Deal." Before leaving, Manfred gave a slight tug at the corner of his lips and said slowly, "Mr. Kyle, I advise you to give up early. The ones who don't want money are the most dangerous. If she doesn't even want money, what could she possibly want?" Right, if she doesn't even want money, what could she possibly want? Back then, Kyle couldn't understand, but now he does. Yet, Sharon is no longer by his side. Kyle clutched the shoes in his hand, his fingers turning white and veins bulging. The night grew deeper, a light rain began to fall, and the currents on the water's surface grew increasingly swift. At this moment, the rescue team came ashore. "Mr. Kyle, the current is too strong now. It's no longer safe to enter the water. Besides, we've already passed the optimal rescue window. Mr. Kyle, please accept our condolences." The rain gradually blurred Kyle's vision, his eyes burning red as he looked down at the shoe in his hand. He murmured, "As long as there's a glimmer of hope, keep searching." Just then, Elizabeth approached Kyle under a black umbrella and said softly, "Kyle, it's almost 10. I still need to go home for my beauty sleep. How much longer are you going to make them search? It's just some lowly person. If they're dead, they're dead. Is it really worth all this fuss? Kyle felt his chest tighten at these words. Raising a hand, a slap landed on Elizabeth's face. Didn't I tell you not to take a life? Elizabeth staggered back a few steps from the blow, her umbrella falling to the ground. Clutching her cheek, she stared at Kyle in disbelief. Kyle, you actually hit me. This was the first time Kyle had ever laid hands on her since childhood. No matter what happened before, he had always protected her, putting her first in everything. She never imagined there would come a day when Kyle would raise his hand against her. She completely broke down. Kyle, for that wretched bitch, you actually hit me. Kyle heard this and slapped her again. Who allowed you to speak of her like that? Elizabeth was slapped to the ground, her face red and swollen, her eyes full of disbelief. Kyle, don't tell me you're in love with her now. Didn't you tell me it was just a fling? Kyle seemed not to hear, just stood there blankly. Elizabeth, this time you've really gone too far. If anything happens to Sharon, I won't let you off. Elizabeth looked at Kyle's serious expression and suddenly panicked, her eyes welling up with tears. Are you serious? Kyle, I'm your fiancé. Are you going to turn against me for Sharon? Have you already changed your heart? I never should have gone to America. Kyle, can we ever go back to how we were before? Elizabeth clutched at Kyle's pant leg. Gazing up at the towering man with pleading eyes, Kyle looked down coldly at Elizabeth beneath his feet, roughly kicking her hand away. He growled in a low voice, "Get lost." Elizabeth struggled to her feet, her Cucanad spring limited edition white dress already soaked with muddy water. He looked utterly disheveled. The man who once cherished her and prioritized her in everything had now raised his hand against her for another woman. Elizabeth raised her finger, pointing at Kyle. Holding back the tears that threatened to spill as she said, "Kyle, you'll regret this. I want to call off our engagement." With that, she turned and ran back into the Lincoln, slamming the door shut before speeding away. Kyle remained standing in place. The rain grew heavier. Wanda comforted Elizabeth, saying, "Elizabeth, don't be sad. Perhaps Mr. Kyle is just angry right now. Once he calms down, he'll surely realize who's truly the best match for him. You're the Liu family's precious daughter. The two of you are literally made for each other in this world." Elizabeth sat in the car, as if she hadn't heard anything, her eyes vacant as she stared out the window. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Perhaps she shouldn't have gone abroad in the first place. Everyone who witnessed this scene was in disbelief. Over the years, Kyle had doted on Elizabeth, and they had all seen it with their own eyes, to curry favor with the Marshall family. Those present had treated Elizabeth's words as gospel, but now, Elizabeth had been publicly slapped twice by Kyle. Even his beloved Elizabeth was like this, let alone those involved in this matter. Kyle stood still, letting the rain wash over his body. Manfred had never seen such a Kyle before, his eyes filled with disbelief. What on earth was happening now? Manfred frowned and said, "Kyle, do you know what you're doing? Elizabeth is your fiancée. Have you really fallen in love with Sharon? That's just too outrageous." Kyle felt a catch in his breath. Love. When they were deeply in love, Sharon often asked him if he loved her. He had always answered with love, but back then he thought his feelings for Sharon were just a fling. So without exception, every response was half-hearted. All along, he had believed he didn't love Sharon. But why now? His heart ached so badly it felt like dying. At that moment, he suddenly realized he loved Sharon, but that love was too intense. Too heavy. It had already seeped into his spleen and sunk deep into his heart. By the time she noticed, it was already too late. Kyle dared not admit his love for Sharon. He glanced at Manfred, his gaze as dark and lifeless as stagnant water. "If you utter another word, I swear I'll make you disappear from this world." Manfred dared not speak after hearing that. A day passed. Kyle drove to the apartment where he and Sharon had lived together for 5 years. He sat on the leather sofa in the living room, legs crossed, the silence around him so profound he could only hear his own heavy breathing. He reached out to pick up the fallen photo album. Looking at the picture of Sharon and himself, a bitter, inexpressible feeling welled up in his heart. Sharon's presence is everywhere here. Except by his side where Sharon is no more. At that moment, Kyle's phone rang. He quickly answered. "Hello, have you found her, Mr. Kyle?" "We haven't found Ms. Sharon's remains. With the recent heavy rains, Ms. Sharon might have been washed downstream somewhere. We're increasing manpower to continue the search." Kyle felt as if his heart had been pierced by silver needles. "Keep searching. I want only her." The words sounded as if spoken to others yet also to himself. Kyle hung up the phone, feeling only suffocating pain in his chest. Only by lying on the bed where he and Sharon had once loved desperately could he still detect Sharon's faint lingering presence. "My heart felt as if it were being mercilessly squeezed by an invisible hand, the moment I closed my eyes." My mind was completely filled with Sharon, her voice, her smile, her scent. Kyle felt as though something had hollowed out his heart entirely. My head was heavy and dizzy. Gradually, he fell asleep. Or perhaps passed out from the fever. In a half-dreaming state, he had a dream where he returned to the time when he first met Sharon. This time, he didn't choose to lie or pursue Sharon with a casual mindset. Instead, he openly and honestly told Sharon about his identity and began courting her passionately. The joy of regaining what was lost nearly filled his entire heart. In his dream, he kissed Sharon for the first time. Her cheeks flushed slightly, yet she still responded shyly. As the temperature rose higher, Kyle woke up again. He looked around and only then realized he had somehow ended up in the hospital. His brows furrowed as he asked, "How did I get here? Kyle, what's wrong with you? Your fever's hit 104 degrees Fahrenheit and you didn't even notice." Manfred stared at him in disbelief. "This is fucking unbelievable. Gotta post this on Moments first. A fever. So I'm running a fever. Honestly bizarre. You've always had an iron constitution, how'd you suddenly catch a cold like this?" On the other side, Sharon returned to her family estate in a Chevrolet after getting off the plane. During dinner that evening, her mother, Ella, served her favorite pickled mustard greens while looking at Sharon with expectant eyes. "Sharon, your father told me everything. That grandson of Mr. Marshall is truly despicable. I think, after this incident, you won't be going back to City J, right? Does that mean you'll be staying home from now on?" Sharon poked at the rice in her bowl. "I definitely won't be going back. I'll stay home for now." Ella felt her nose tingle with emotion and nodded with a smile. "That's good, as long as you don't leave Mom. These past 3 years, you don't know how much Mom has missed you." Sharon caught her breath at the words. Looking back, she truly had been an unfilial daughter. To think she hadn't returned home for 3 whole years, all for a man. In 2 more years, she would be 30, and her parents would be over 50. For the past 3 years, Sharon had been busy dating Kyle and trying to fit into his circle. Yet she had forgotten the parents who loved her most in the world. Sharon put down her chopsticks and hugged Ella tightly. "Mom, I'm sorry for making you worry these 3 years." Ella patted Sharon's back and said gently, "Silly child, why apologize to your mom? It's enough that you're back, just enough that you're back." At this moment, even Sharon's usually reticent father Tyler had reddened eyes. "All right, let's eat, or the food will get cold." Ella wiped away her tears, as if just coming to her senses. Yes, let's eat, sweetheart." The next day, Tyler specifically told Sharon to dress up nicely. In the afternoon, he took her to a 5-star restaurant. By now, Sharon was used to this. As soon as she got out of the Chevrolet, she asked her dad, "Tyler, Dad, is this blind date with your business partner's son again?" "You'll find out soon enough. You two even knew each other when you were kids." "Did we know each other as kids?" Sharon was completely baffled. She couldn't recall ever meeting the son of her father's business partner. As soon as they entered the hotel, the receptionist bowed at a perfect 90-degree angle. "Welcome, right this way, please." Immediately after, they arrived at a very luxurious private room. Inside, a man in a white suit was already seated, his back looking very tall and straight. Sharon frowned, feeling that this back was very familiar. She walked closer. When she saw the man's face, Sharon was completely stunned. The man turned around and saw Sharon, the corners of his lips curling slightly as if he had anticipated it. "Sharon, it was actually Ronald." Sharon froze, her eyes filled with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Ronald smiled faintly and spread his hands. "As you can see, the engagement." Sharon's gaze darted between Ronald and her father, finally settling on her father. "No, what's going on? You're not saying the son of the business partner you mentioned is Ronald?" "That's right. Ronald was also in City J a while ago. He said you two had already been in contact for some time, hadn't you? He said he liked you very much. Anyway, you had already broken up with that boyfriend at the time. So your mother and I put our heads together and, with your Virgil uncle, arranged your marriage." For a moment, Sharon was at a loss for words. Tyler and Ronald's father Virgil exchanged a knowing smile. "I told you this engagement was the right decision." After much deliberation, Sharon still felt something wasn't right. "No, Dad, do you really think this is appropriate? As the person involved, I'm actually the last one to find out about my own engagement." Tyler frowned slightly. "What's inappropriate about it? Don't you like Ronald?" Sharon choked on her words. "No, but that's not the point." Tyler cut off Sharon's protest. "If you don't dislike him, then that's settled. Give it a try. Anyway, I still have matters to discuss with your Uncle Virgil. You kids eat first, I'll call the driver to pick you up later." With that, Tyler left side by side with Virgil. Suddenly, the spacious private room was left with only her and Ronald. Sharon felt extremely awkward whenever she recalled how she had misunderstood Ronald back then. She cleared her throat awkwardly. Ronald, I really didn't know my father had arranged my engagement without telling me." Ronald shook his head slightly. At that time, I actually wanted to explain. But Sharon, you didn't give me the chance, so now, let me reintroduce myself. My name is Ronald, and you used to like calling me R. Sharon heard this, and her thoughts gradually drifted back to the past. When she was very young, her father brought home a chubby little boy. She couldn't remember his exact name, but it had an R in it, so, from then on, she always called him R. At first, she didn't like him very much because no matter what Sharon asked him to play, he refused. He just locked himself in his room reading books all the time. Later she learned that the little boy's parents were going through a divorce, and her father told her to keep him company more often to prevent him from getting depressed. From then on, she accompanied the little boy reading in the study. Then one day out of the blue, the little boy asked her, "Can you teach me how to ride a horse? That way I can ride to find my mom." Sharon was taken aback. "Where is your mother? I can take you there directly." "Do you know?" The little boy shook his head. "Let's learn horseback riding first. When I find out where my mother is, I'll go look for her." From then on, the little boy became her only playmate. They spent 3 full years together. Later, until his father came to take her away, Sharon, her eyes filled with disbelief. "It's actually you, little Mr. Ronald. When did you recognize me?" Ronald gazed at her with profound depth in his eyes. "Do you remember when we first met in City J, and I said you reminded me of a friend? You thought I was just hitting on you. I wasn't sure back then. Until I saw you riding freely on horseback again. You said you had a boyfriend at the time." Sharon was so shocked her jaw nearly dropped. Their first meeting had been almost 3 years ago. She never imagined he'd noticed her from that far back. The little boy who'd lived with her family for 3 years had, after over a decade, become the feared Mr. Ronald of City J. Sharon smacked her forehead in frustration. "I actually thought you wanted to be my sugar daddy back then. Now that I think about it, I'm so embarrassed." Ronald instinctively reached out to stop her when he saw her hitting herself. "My bad, I should have come clean with you sooner." The two exchanged a knowing smile. For a moment, it felt like being back in childhood. Then, the two began chatting. Sharon noticed that Ronald was just as talkative and knowledgeable as when they were kids. No matter what she said, he could always keep up with the conversation. After dinner, Ronald gallantly offered, "Let me walk you home." Sharon nodded without refusing. Just as the car had traveled a short distance, Sharon received a call from her father. "Sweetie, how about setting the engagement banquet for the 19th of this month? Your mom checked, it's an auspicious day." Hearing this, she glanced at her phone. Today was the 10th. "Wait, Dad, isn't this a bit too much like forcing a duck onto a perch? It's an engagement, not a marriage. If you don't like it, you can always call it off later. Just stabilize things for now." Sharon was about to speak when Ronald, who was still driving, interjected. "Sharon, I think Uncle is right. Just consider this an early start to my probation period." Sharon widened her eyes and whispered, "Why are you getting involved too?" "Oh, so Ronald brought you back. Stay for dinner before you leave." "Okay, Uncle." Ronald looked at Wen with a smile in his eyes, full of doting affection. By the time Sharon realized it, her dad had already hung up the phone. "No, what probationary period? What do you mean?" "Literally, I want to pursue you. What do you think?" Ronald met Sharon's flustered gaze in the rearview mirror and suddenly chuckled. "You're not scared, are you? Even the little troublemaker can be afraid." Sharon knew this was reverse psychology, but she fell for it anyway. Who's scared? It's just an engagement. If you're not afraid, why should I be?" Ronald curled the corner of his lips with a profound gaze. "Sure, if you're not afraid, let's set the engagement banquet for the 18th. When we get back, I'll have a good discussion with your uncle." Sharon choked on her words. Hadn't she just shot herself in the foot? But she still steeled herself and said, "Fine. It's just an engagement anyway. I don't care." After arriving home, the two families settled on a date for the engagement banquet. Sharon lay in bed, feeling as if everything were a dream. Suddenly, she was engaged. On the 18th, at the engagement banquet, many reporters were present. The engagement banquet of Sharon, the daughter of the billionaire owner of B-City's breeding base, and Mr. Ronald, the young scion of the ZX Group. Sharon, arm in arm with Ronald, appeared at the scene. Ronald was dressed in a well-tailored dark suit with a bow tie. The cinched waist accentuated his broad shoulders and long legs, and a faint smile graced his gentle, jade-like face. Ronald's hand subtly rested on Sharon's slender waist, his broad frame making Sharon appear even more petite. What a perfect match. A handsome man and a beautiful woman. The heir to the wealthy family has a face now, many in the crowd exclaimed in admiration. Sharon's expression remained unchanged upon hearing this. After all, she had been praised excessively since childhood. "You look beautiful today," Ronald whispered softly, leaning slightly closer to Sharon's ear. "You're quite handsome." "Little Mr. Ronald," Sharon responded with a smile curling at her lips. When she looked back at Ronald, she noticed his face had suddenly turned red. Sharon's pupils brightened as if discovering new territory. She tilted her head and leaned in, gazing at him with burning intensity. From an outsider's perspective, they looked very much like they were kissing. Sharon, a familiar voice called out at that moment. Sharon turned to look, meeting an icy gaze. Kyle wore a dark suit. His figure sleek and straight, his brows sharp as blades, his tall nose bridge as if carved by a craftsman's knife, his dark eyes cold and devoid of any emotion. When Kyle saw Sharon, his eyes were filled with disbelief. Sharon is alive, she's still alive. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he spoke. So you're the heiress of B City's breeding base. Sharon, you're alive. Why did you lie to me? Sharon looked at him and said nonchalantly, what's the matter, Mr. Kyle? Are you the only one allowed to deceive me, and I can't deceive you? Hearing this, Kyle's face stiffened, and a dull, throbbing pain spread densely through his chest. Indeed, wasn't it he who first deceived Sharon? But even so, she shouldn't have used her own life to deceive herself. Kyle seemed to have found a justification for himself. But even so, you shouldn't have used your own life to deceive me. Do you know how I've been all this time? I was merely returning the favor. I couldn't care less how you've been all this time, no doubt tormented by your own guilt. Sharon smirked, her deep eyes amused as she looked at Kyle, as if speaking of something utterly trivial. Kyle gazed at her indifferent eyes, feeling as if something had pierced his heart. Suppressing his discomfort, he spoke with a trembling voice. Sharon, I really missed you during the time you were away. I didn't realize my own feelings before. Can you give me another chance? Sharon arched an eyebrow and stared coldly at him, her tone icy. I don't seem to have any obligation to wait for Mr. Kyle to figure out his own heart. Sharon's repeated use of Mr. Kyle felt like a knife stabbing into Kyle's heart, making his expression even more grim. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his emotions, but his words still carried a hint of anger. Sharon, you said it yourself, you've never liked anyone else. I'm your first, aren't I? Hearing this, Sharon felt her chest tighten. She must have been blind to have misjudged someone like this. What does it matter now? I don't love you anymore, it's that simple. She casually hooked her arm through Ronald's, tilted her head, and looked at Kyle. Mr. Kyle, allow me to introduce you. This is my fiancé, Ronald. Welcome to my engagement banquet. Eat and drink well. We won't be accompanying you further. Sharon then prepared to leave with Ronald. Kyle watched the two, a perfectly matched pair, and jealousy surged in his heart. He grabbed Sharon's slender wrist and, in front of everyone, said coldly, you two cannot get engaged. Sharon hadn't reacted yet when Ronald, who was beside her, grabbed Kyle's hand that was holding Sharon. Ronald's veins bulged on his forearm and the back of his hand, showing the immense force he was exerting. His dark eyes narrowed slightly, and his tone was an undisguised threat. Mr. Kyle, what do you intend to do to my fiancé? The two stood in sharp opposition, a tense standoff, as if they would disregard the setting and fiercely fight at any moment. This unusual atmosphere instantly attracted the attention of many. Upon seeing this scene, the reporters raised their cameras. The esteemed Marshall family's heir versus ZX Group's Mr. Ronald. Both men at the pinnacle of the capital's elite are jointly pursuing the heiress of $1 billion aquaculture base. Sharon. This headline is a sure thing. Sharon noticed everyone's eyes turn towards her. She gave an awkward laugh, subtly pried Kyle's hand off, and whispered to him, as you can see, today is my engagement banquet. If you do anything out of line, my father won't let you off. Just then, Kyle's phone rang. He looked down and saw it was Elizabeth calling. He said coldly to Ronald, still not letting go. Ronald spread his hands at the words, his gaze still fixed malevolently on Kyle. Sharon patted his hand reassuringly and whispered softly, let's go. Ronald nodded slightly, put his arm around her slender waist, and the two turned and left. Kyle watched the two figures walk away. He finally pressed the answer button. On the other end of the line, Elizabeth's anxious voice came through. Kyle, I beg you, please save the Liu family. Kyle frowned, a hint of impatience in his tone. What's wrong? Elizabeth sobbed. The Liu family is bankrupt. The bank people came in like a storm, taking everything they could from the house, and Dad was taken away too. I don't know what to do. Kyle, only you can save us now. What happened? I don't know. They said it was some tax issue. They took my father away for investigation. My father has always been upright and honorable. Someone must be framing our Liu family. Kyle. You're the only one who can save us now. Elizabeth's world completely collapsed. Suddenly, her father was arrested. Kyle heard and asked, tax issues. He suddenly remembered that 3 years ago, there was a project with the Liu family. Elizabeth had wanted to involve him, but he noticed problems with their accounts and refused. Was it because of that Liaoqing project 3 years ago? Elizabeth gasped, her breath catching. Kyle, I don't know, even if she claimed ignorance now. He would find out soon enough. Kyle despised two things above all else, being used and being deceived. A growing suspicion told him that 3 years ago, Elizabeth had used him, and now, 3 years later, Elizabeth was deceiving him. His voice dropped dangerously low as he demanded, "Elizabeth, you know what I hate most, don't you?" Elizabeth was startled upon hearing this. She trembled and said, I know, what's the matter, Kyle?" Kyle hung up the phone and called his assistant. "Go investigate the Liu family's affairs." Meanwhile, Sharon and Ronald left and entered the inner hall. Most of the attendees today were her father's business partners. Sharon followed by his side, watching Ronald effortlessly chat with Nazir, making plans for golf, bowling, and tennis. It seemed wherever he was, the atmosphere would never turn dull. After making the rounds, Sharon, her feet aching from the high heels, couldn't help but tug at Ronald's suit sleeve and whisper, "Where did you learn all this diplomatic talk? Do you actually know all those people?" Ronald curled the corner of his mouth slightly upon hearing this and ruffled Sharon's hair. "Business needs, some acquaintances are familiar, others less so." Sharon nodded and praised. "As expected of an Ivy League graduate, your social skills are truly unmatched." Ronald chuckled softly, gazing tenderly at Sharon. "Sharon, these things are just routine for me, but for you. If you inherit the Wen family business someday, you'll have to get used to them too. Though if you're uncomfortable, after marriage, supporting just you would be more than enough for me." Sharon snorted upon hearing this. "Who said anything about marrying you? I can support myself just fine." Ronald chuckled softly, leaning close to Sharon's ear and whispering just loud enough for her to hear. Yeah, it's bound to happen sooner or later anyway." Sharon shot Ronald a glare and turned her head away angrily. Ronald, seeing this, pulled Sharon into his arms and said gently, "All right, I'll stop teasing you. Those high heels must be tiring you out, let's go sit over there." The two made their way to the sofa and sat down. At that moment, a waiter approached carrying 2 glasses of red wine, respectfully placing them before the two. Sharon looked at Ronald, whose lips maintained a faint smile that was impossible to decipher. She couldn't figure out what kind of person he truly was. It felt like trying to understand him through a veil, leaving her utterly perplexed. Yet she had to admit, Ronald was an impeccable choice for a fiancé. He was humble and courteous, exceptionally capable, held a pivotal position in the business world, and treated her with meticulous care. Sharon picked up the glass of red wine before her, took a delicate sip, and cast her gaze toward her father conversing with someone not far away. Her father was growing old, and as the sole heir of the Wen family, the responsibilities weighing on her were immense. If she were to be with someone like him in the future, the burden on her shoulders would lighten considerably. Suddenly, she understood why her father had praised him to the skies. After the engagement banquet, Ronald and Sharon ran into Kyle as they were leaving. Kyle saw Sharon, stepped forward, and said coldly, "We need to talk." Sharon frowned slightly, a flicker of disgust flashing in her eyes. "I don't think there's anything left for us to discuss. The only reason I'm not seeking revenge is that I refuse to stoop to your level. What you and Elizabeth did will disgust me for the rest of my life." Sharon turned and walked away. Kyle reached out to grab Sharon's book, about to say something more, but he was stopped by Ronald, who stepped forward and forced him back. Ronald curled his lips slightly, his voice deep. "I warn you, don't get near my fiancé again, or don't blame me for being rude." Kyle clenched his fist, staring straight into Ronald's eyes without fear. "Others might fear you, but Kyle, am not afraid of you. The Marshall family isn't so easy to deal with." Ronald's usually gentle and jade-like face showed a trace of cracking, but he quickly regained his composure. "Is that so? Then let's wait and see." Ronald turned and left, got into the car, and said gently to Sharon in the back seat, "Sorry to keep you waiting." Sharon shook her head with a smile. "Not at all. What did you talk about?" Ronald turned his head to look at Sharon, chuckling. "I don't think you'd want to know." Sharon was taken aback. "I really don't care much about him, but I'm curious about what you two talked about." Just then, Sharon's phone rang abruptly, interrupting their conversation. Sharon looked down and saw that it was her best friend, Cherry, whom she hadn't contacted in almost a year. After the call connected, Cherry's voice came through the phone. "Sharon, I'm coming back the day after tomorrow. I've finally graduated. Woo-hoo." Sharon was taken aback. "Didn't you say you were delaying graduation? How did you suddenly pass?" Cherry skillfully dodged the question. "Oh, I just didn't want to stay in Germany anymore, so I used a little bit of my money power. Didn't I see your uncle's moments? You're really fast, already engaged. Did your uncle agree to you and that delivery guy from before?" Sharon froze, glanced at Ronald, and her face showed a hint of embarrassment. "Didn't we break up long ago?" "Broke up? Good riddance. I've been telling you all along that such men are unreliable. You see, then who's this guy you're engaged to? Is he handsome?" "When did you start dating?" "We didn't date. He's just the son of my father's business partner." "What?" the other person exclaimed in surprise. You got engaged without even dating. Well, I suppose for big families like yours, arranged marriages are normal. The world has truly turned into something I can't comprehend. Though he is quite handsome, just don't know what his character is like. Sharon glanced sideways at Ronald, who sat stiffly in his suit. His sharply defined profile turned toward the window, making his expression unreadable. I'll tell you later. He's sitting right next to me now. The line fell silent for a moment. The next moment, the call ended with a beep 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 sound. Then her phone started ringing randomly. Cherry, wait. Why didn't you say so earlier? Oh no. Did he hear everything? Sharon stroked her phone and replied, probably yes. He's the little mister, Ronald I mentioned to you before. Cherry sent 3 question marks. No way, you work fast. Kid, I knew he'd like you. Now you're directly engaged. Sharon stared at the text message on her phone, unsure how to reply. A strange silence fell inside the car. Ronald shifted his gaze back inside the car and suddenly asked, Sharon, what do you think our relationship is now? Sharon froze, meeting Ronald's deep gaze. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Why are you suddenly asking this? Ronald lowered his eyelids, a trace of bitterness welling up in his heart. Nothing, I was just asking to see how things are going, whether you might have even a little affection for me. Sharon didn't know how to respond to this. When she first met Mr. Ronald, she had a boyfriend and naturally maintained distance from all members of the opposite sex. But when facing Ronald, when seeing those expectant eyes of his, she found it hard to refuse, so later they ended up having 2 or 3 meals together. After she made things clear, Ronald had always positioned himself as just a friend. Now she suddenly found herself confused about her feelings for Ronald. What exactly were they? For the rest of the journey, Sharon would occasionally say something, and Ronald would respond absent-mindedly. She could clearly sense Ronald's low spirits. Soon, the car entered the Wen family's estate. The car stopped in front of a French-style villa. The driver got out and opened the rear door on Sharon's side, saying respectfully, Sharon, we've arrived. Sharon nodded in response and said to the driver, thank you. As she left, she glanced back at Ronald and said softly, Ronald, thank you for bringing me home. Drive safely. Goodbye. Ronald, his pupils suddenly brightened upon hearing goodbye, and he pressed further. When? Sharon was utterly confused. What do you mean? When? Ronald gazed at her, his eyes smiling. You said goodbye. When will we meet again? Where? Sharon couldn't help but laugh, realizing that was what he meant. But isn't this basic social etiquette? Are you asking me out? Ronald said with a cheerful smile, somewhat disapprovingly. Sharon, obviously. I'm pursuing you. Sharon's heart trembled. She hadn't expected Ronald to be so direct, leaving her momentarily flustered. After a long pause, Sharon waved her phone and smiled at Ronald, saying, chasing me won't be that easy. Let's see if you can pass the test. Ronald gazed at her with an intensity that was almost frightening. True gold fears no fire, and neither does a sincere heart. Sharon gave him a deep, meaningful look, then turned and walked away. Ronald sat in the back seat, watching the figure disappear through the doorway, before murmuring softly, let's go, back to the hotel. 3 days later, Sharon arrived at the airport wearing sunglasses. Cherry, from a distance, she spotted a woman strutting stylishly in Kuds's latest trench coat. Sunglasses completing the look. Sharon. Cherry dragged her suitcase over and pulled Sharon into a tight hug. Seizing the moment, Cherry sneakily copped a feel of Sharon. Damn, you're still so stacked. Sharon pushed her away with undisguised disgust in her voice. Damn, why are you still acting like some female hooligan? Didn't all those years abroad cure you of that? Cherry raised an eyebrow. You wouldn't know this, but foreigners actually love my type. The partners I've had over the years could form a line stretching all the way to France, each one hotter than the last. Then, wasn't there one you liked the most? Sharon asked tentatively. Cherry spread her hands nonchalantly and said, of course I do. You have no idea how ridiculously handsome the guy I've been dating recently is. I'll show you his photo later. I was actually thinking of dating him a bit longer, but then his mom showed up with 60 million and told me to get lost. So here I am, taking the 60 million and rolling right back. Sharon froze, sensing an inexplicable trace of desolation in Cherry's tone. You came back because of this. You're not upset, are you? Cherry was momentarily stunned, brushing aside the strange feeling in her heart as she looked at Sharon and said, why would I be upset? 60 million, not everyone gets that kind of luck. Okay. Sharon felt a pang in her chest. When she first met Cherry, the girl was poor, living with her elderly grandmother, but she never compromised for money. Sharon didn't know what Cherry had been through in Germany all these years, but it pained her to see her like this. If you're short on money, just tell me, I'll take care of you. Cherry burst into laughter. All right, Miss Rich Girl, can we go home now? Sharon nodded. Leading Cherry to the door, she handed her luggage to the driver. Then she said to Cherry, you'll be staying with me during this time. I won't book you a separate hotel, it's perfect since we haven't seen each other in years. Cherry pursed her lips. Wow, you actually thought I'd choose a hotel over staying at the estate? Sharon smiled and said, I wouldn't dare suggest otherwise. Get in the car. Then the two got into the car, and the driver took them back to the villa. The journey was pleasant with laughter and conversation along the way. Things have changed so much. B-City has transformed so much, it wasn't nearly this developed when we were in high school, Cherry exclaimed. Sharon nodded in agreement. Well, think about it, how many years has it been since high school? Almost 12. Right, hey, let's organize a class reunion for fun. After all, I'm practically a millionaire now. Sharon was taken aback and shook her head. You're always coming up with random ideas. Cherry finished speaking and immediately dug out the high school group chat to start organizing the reunion. Many said they weren't in City B and probably couldn't make it. Others said they could go, but due to work commitments, the gathering would have to be scheduled for a weekend. After arriving home, the two of them lounged on the sofa, killing time. Sharon, do you think the academic god will come? I heard he studied medicine in college and has already published several SCI papers internationally. He's such a rising star in the medical field at such a young age. I wonder what he looks like now. He was the dream guy for so many girls back then. Wonder which lucky girl ended up with him. Sharon heard this, and a cool, aloof figure surfaced in her mind. I don't know, probably won't come. The hospital must be keeping him so busy. Cherry pursed her lips at the words. True enough. Someone as outstanding as him, I could never hope to catch up. Sharon was taken aback. Do you like him? Cherry shook her head. No, I just admire talented people. The two continued lounging on the sofa, killing time. It wasn't until evening when Aunt Wu brought out the prepared dishes that they leisurely made their way to the dining table. Sharon, where are your parents? Are they coming down to eat? Cherry felt somewhat uncomfortable seeing just the two of them at the large dining table. Sharon explained upon hearing this. After the engagement day, my dad said there was an issue with an overseas order. He took my mom abroad a few days ago to handle it. They probably won't be back anytime soon. Cherry chuckled. Look at it this way, your dad took your mom out for a trip and left you behind. Sharon shook her head. I'm not sure, but they've done this kind of thing quite often before. Cherry lowered her eyes and sighed. Uncle and auntie's relationship is still as good as ever. If I could ever have one like that in my lifetime, I'd consider myself incredibly lucky. Oh right, speaking of luck, why don't we go pray tomorrow? Maybe it'll make the stocks I bought go up. Sharon nodded in agreement. Alright, I'll go with you. After dinner, the two of us watched a movie together in the living room. Sharon, what's really going on between you and that little mister? Ronald, tell me honestly, do you remember me telling you about my slightly chubby childhood playmate? I remember, don't tell me it's him. Sharon nodded. That's him. Holy crap, childhood sweethearts. Cherry looked utterly shocked. This is fate. Sharon, why don't you give him a call and we can all go to Chenshan Temple together tomorrow? Sharon was taken aback but made the call under her urging. As soon as the call connected, Ronald's gentle voice came through the speaker. Sharon, what's wrong? Still awake this late? Sharon glanced at her phone and realized it was already midnight. What decent person schedules an outing at midnight? No, just wanted to ask if you're free tomorrow. Would you like to visit Chenshan Temple together? Chenshan Temple. Ronald paused slightly. Why do you suddenly want to go to Chenshan Temple? Do you have a wish? No, I'm accompanying a friend. Okay. What time tomorrow? I'll have the driver pick you up. 8 o'clock tomorrow. Alright, get some rest early. Sharon. Good night. Good night. After hanging up the phone, Sharon looked at Cherry. He agreed. He'll pick us up tomorrow morning at 8. Cherry nodded. Then her phone vibrated. She glanced down, promptly declined the incoming call, and immediately added the number to her block list. Sharon witnessed the smooth operation and couldn't help asking, whose call was that? You hung up so quickly. Cherry explained upon hearing this. Oh, my ex-boyfriend, the one I told you I really liked. But I took 60 million from his mom. So I couldn't just take the money and not deliver. Right, let me show you his photo. He's half Chinese, half French, and ridiculously good-looking. As she spoke, she opened her photo album, and a strikingly handsome young man appeared before Sharon's eyes. The young man had sharp, well-defined features and wore a white baseball jacket, exuding an overwhelming youthful charm that seemed to leap off the screen. Sharon was taken aback. He looks like he hasn't even graduated from college. Cherry nodded. Still in her junior year. I'm the teaching assistant for their class. Looks like your type. If you really can't bear to part with it, why don't we return the 60 million? Cherry shook her head at the words. Forget it, it's not suitable. Besides, we're not from compatible social backgrounds. If we part ways now, the worst is just regret. But if I take it seriously and he ends up abandoning me to marry someone of his own standing, I'd lose both the person and any chance at stability, then I'd have nowhere left to cry. Sharon didn't quite understand. The romantic philosophy she had always upheld was this: love together if you love, part ways if you don't. So when it comes to Cherry's pragmatic approach to love, weighing pros and cons, I can't quite agree. But on second thought, everyone's upbringing is different. Cherry was destined from childhood to see things further than others due to her unique growth environment. The next morning, early, Ronald was already waiting downstairs. Today, Ronald wore a simple white shirt with fitted black trousers, his dark hair naturally falling over his forehead, giving him less of a businesslike demeanor and more of a youthful vibe. Cherry's eyes lit up when she saw Ronald. She nudged Sharon with a smile, as if to say, "The son of the business partner your dad introduced is quite handsome." Sharon smiled faintly and said to Ronald, "Good morning. When I invited you yesterday, I forgot to ask, do you have any company matters today? I hope we're not disturbing you." Ronald tilted his head and said with a smile, "No way." Then the three of them drove together to the foot of the famous Chenshan Temple in City B. The year was drawing to a close. Chenshan Temple was bustling with worshippers, a continuous stream of people coming and going, holding their incense sticks. The trio chatted as they climbed the steps one by one, and before they knew it, they had reached the temple entrance. Cherry somehow produced 3 red silk ribbons and handed one to each of us. "Since we're already here," she said, "go on, write a wish. What if it comes true?" Sharon and Ronald exchanged a knowing smile as they accepted the ribbons. At that moment, Ronald asked, "Sharon, do you have any wishes?" Sharon paused thoughtfully before replying with a smile, "Not really. How about you?" Ronald gazed deeply, leaning close to her ear as he said, "Of course I do. I hope Sharon will become my wife." Sharon paused in surprise at his words, then let out a soft laugh. "That's against the rules." Ronald raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Then, what's Sharon's punishment?" Nearby, Cherry shivered with exaggerated disgust. "I can't stand you lovey-dovey fiancés." She stepped aside, huffing and puffing as she wrote, and soon had it ready to be hung up. "Hang it higher, so it will come true." At that moment, Ronald and Sharon had also finished writing. The two approached the wishing tree and, just as they arrived, saw Cherry piously bow 3 times. "Heaven above, bless me with endless romance in this lifetime, preferably with handsome young men." Ronald burst into laughter upon hearing this, then said, "I have a few great friends I could introduce to you, but on one condition: you must put in a good word for me in front of Sharon from now on." Cherry, her eyes lit up. "It's a deal." Sharon watched the two of them and couldn't resist teasing. "Is it appropriate for you two to make a deal right in front of me?" Ronald shook his head with a smile, gazing affectionately at Sharon. "Not a deal, but an attempt to please." Ronald lowered his stance so very, very low, as if sinking into the dust. The three of them walked while chatting. They quickly finished touring Chenshan Temple. The sky gradually darkened. On their way down the mountain, they unexpectedly passed by a night market. The trio weaved through the crowd, thoroughly enjoying themselves. New Year's Eve, City B was hit by a massive hailstorm. At that moment, Sharon received a call from her parents. "Sweetheart, Dad and Mom probably won't make it back this year. All flights are cancelled, and the roads are covered in snow. Be careful if you go out." Sharon held her phone, looking at her parents' faces on the screen with some resignation. "I know, Dad, Mom, you've said it 3 times already. I'm not a kid anymore. You two take care out there." Alright. After hanging up the phone, Cherry laughed and said, "Sharon, looks like this new year will be just the two of us in our own little world." Sharon smiled faintly upon hearing this. "Yeah, by the way, speaking of which, hasn't your fiancé City J finished handling his matters yet?" Sharon shook her head, not very clear. Just then, the doorbell suddenly rang. Yesterday, Sharon had given all the servants in the entire manor a day off. Who could be coming at this hour? Sharon walked to the door, and as soon as she opened it, a gust of cold wind hit her face, making her shiver involuntarily. Standing outside was a familiar figure. It was Ronald. "Surprise," Ronald said, tilting his head. "What are you doing here?" Sharon asked, her eyes filled with shock. "Just this morning. He had mentioned having an international meeting and said he probably wouldn't arrive until tomorrow." Ronald pulled Sharon into his arms and whispered, "I've missed you, Sharon. It's New Year's Eve, and I want to spend it with you." Sharon felt a surge of warmth in her heart. She held Ronald tightly, feeling the warmth of his body, and said to him for the first time, "I've missed you too." The two embraced for a long time. Ronald spoke up, "Sharon, let's get married." Sharon hadn't had time to respond yet. At that moment, Cherry, seeing that Sharon had been at the door for so long, came downstairs worriedly. Spotting the scene, she teased, well, you two." Not even closing the door, Sharon only then realized the door was still open. She quickly pulled Ronald inside and shut the door. "With such heavy snow and hail outside, how did you get here? Have you finished handling the matters in City J?" Sharon raised her hand to brush off the lingering snow from Ronald's coat. Ronald was chilled to the bone, his ears and cheeks flushed red from the cold. It's done, I drove here. On this New Year's Eve night, the three of them had New Year's Eve dinner together and played cards afterward. Sharon and Cherry teamed up and cleaned Ronald out completely. Ronald looked at his empty wallet and said with a bitter smile, "You two are ganging up on me." Sharon and Cherry exchanged a glance and said in unison, "Blame your lack of skills." Outside, the hail was still falling. This New Year's Eve was special for Sharon. After the new year, Ronald returned to City J to handle some company matters. Sharon also began learning about managing the family business under her father's guidance. Cherry opened her own law firm. Sharon met Kyle again at a banquet, where her father introduced him to a business tycoon. After the banquet ended, she left first, and as soon as she stepped out the door, she bumped into someone. Sharon looked up in surprise, freezing completely when she saw who had arrived. Standing before him, it was none other than Kyle, whom she hadn't seen for over a month. Dressed in a brown suit and standing before a Maybach, his pupils trembled slightly upon seeing Sharon. Instinctively stepping forward to approach her, Sharon frowned slightly at the address, her tone laced with displeasure. "No, what are you doing here?" After the last engagement incident, Sharon's father called Kyle's grandfather and laid out everything, good and bad, that had happened. His grandfather was shocked upon hearing it and made a promise, saying he would absolutely not allow Kyle to appear before Sharon again. Only then did her father relent. Looking at Sharon's cold expression, Kyle felt as though countless silver needles were piercing his heart. Never before had he been so acutely aware that even though Sharon was still alive, he had completely lost her. No, he couldn't lose her. Kyle, his eyes bloodshot, grabbed Sharon's hand. "Sharon, I miss you. You have no idea how much you've been on my mind all this time." Sharon struggled to pry his arm away and slapped him. "No, Kyle, if you're sick, go get treated, okay? If it weren't for my dad considering you as Mr. Marshall's only grandson, you'd have been sent to prison long ago." Kyle turned his head slightly from the slap, a bright red palm mark appearing on his fair complexion. Sharon only then noticed that Kyle seemed to have lost considerable weight. "Ha ha ha, perhaps I'm truly sick, Sharon. No matter what happens, I won't let go again." Kyle, eyes bloodshot, had driven 10 hours straight from City J to City B overnight. He couldn't tell how long it had been since he last slept. He was just desperate to see the person who occupied his thoughts day and night, the one who haunted his dreams. Sharon looked at him as if he were insane. "Who are you putting on this act of devotion for now? I'm curious. Do you ever break character and laugh during your performance? Back when you watched Elizabeth and the others plot against me, I didn't see you showing any mercy. What's with this sudden act of being lovesick now?" Phut. Kyle closed his eyes in pain, and when he opened them again, tears welled up in their depths. "Sharon, give me a chance to make it up to you, okay?" Sharon felt her breath catch as she saw the tears in Kyle's eyes. She found it utterly laughable. Was this supposed to be crocodile tears? Compensate? With what? 50 million. Each syllable of 50 million felt like a knife, plunging deep into Kyle's heart. Kyle felt a surge of bitterness in his nasal passages, choking him with unbearable discomfort. He only wanted to make things right with Sharon, but after just this brief conversation, he already felt his heart had been stabbed until it bled profusely. He couldn't help but wonder, Sharon, did she ever truly love him? Kyle remained silent for a moment before speaking. "Sharon, do you remember once saying that no matter how terrible my actions, you'd give me one wish card? I'm asking you now to grant me that chance." Sharon hadn't expected him to bring this up suddenly and froze momentarily, randomly scoffing. He said, "No, that wish card has an expiration date." Kyle was stunned. "What expiration date?" Sharon said gloomily. "When I loved you, it was obvious. Now I don't love you anymore, so that card has expired." Kyle instantly turned deathly pale, as if swept by a bitter wind. Desolate and forlorn, Sharon cast one last glance back at him, then turned and walked away. Back home, Sharon had barely lain down on the sofa when her phone began ringing incessantly, as if possessed. Picking it up, she saw it was her best friend Cherry. Answering the call, she heard Cherry's excited voice. "Sharon, I've got great news. The academic god is coming to our class reunion this time." The volume was a bit loud. Sharon instinctively held the phone farther away. "Then come on over, I'll handle booking the hotel." "Whose restaurant do you feel like eating at?" Cherry declined. "No, someone has volunteered to sponsor this class reunion." "Who? Your fiancé." "He offered it himself." Sharon widened her eyes. "No, you." However, he had one small request. He wanted me to tell him the address for the class reunion. "Maybe he wants to pick you up." Sharon heard Cherry's words and sighed helplessly. "Why doesn't he just ask me himself?" Cherry laughed on the other end of the line. "Getting jealous, huh?" "Oh wow, Sharon, playing the ice queen isn't a good look. You should have a proper talk with your man." Sharon laughed upon hearing this and said, "Great, so you're my brother-in-law now. The class reunion was scheduled at the best five-star hotel in City B. Many had already become fathers and mothers, and everyone chatted and laughed while reminiscing about their long-gone youth. Even the academic prodigy Jay brought his girlfriend to the event. Dressed in a white shirt with dress pants and a slightly stubbled face, Cherry gazed at her youthful white moonlight, now a slightly weathered top talent in the medical field, and couldn't help sighing to Sharon, "Time truly is a butcher's knife. My white moonlight." Sharon smirked slightly and quietly averted her gaze. "You didn't want to organize this class reunion just for him, did you?" Cherry rolled her eyes. "Oh, fine. Yes. Sharon burst into laughter and shook her head. "It's too late now. He brought his girlfriend. You'd better give up." After the class reunion ended, everyone still felt the excitement lingering in the air. They all kept saying they should meet up again soon. Outside the window, sleet fell in flurries, and every exhaled breath turned into swirling mist in the cold. It was already past 10 o'clock at night, and the weather made it difficult to hail a taxi. Everyone had come from far away. Sharon had the driver take everyone home one by one. At the hotel entrance, Cherry sighed. "Heaven never grants our wishes. The more I want something, the less likely I am to get it." At that moment, Sharon saw a man with blonde hair wearing a light-colored trench coat standing under a streetlight not far away. The man's gaze was fixed intently on Cherry, as if he wanted to devour her whole. The man took long strides as he slowly walked toward them. The streetlight cast its glow upon him, exuding an innate nobility, like a prince from the West. Sharon froze. He was the man in Cherry's phone photo, but it was clear that his current attire was far more mature. Sharon tugged at Cherry's sleeve. "Your ex-boyfriend seems to have come looking for you." Cherry followed her gaze and met a pair of deep eyes. At the sight of those brown pupils, her heart trembled. She never expected him to come find her. The man's voice was icy, like frost in a bitter wind. "Cherry, why did you suddenly break up? Why did you leave Germany?" Cherry looked at him calmly and said, "Your mother gave me 60 million to leave you. I accepted, so I left." The man pulled her close and whispered, 60 million? Am I only worth 60 million in your heart? Or do you think our relationship is only worth 60 million? I'll give you more. Come back to me." His voice trailed off, carrying a hint of grievance. Cherry looked displeased and tried to pry his hand away, only to find she couldn't budge it at all. "Our social statuses are too different, and besides, I'll have to return to my country eventually. I can't take the money without delivering what I promised." The man's face darkened as he dragged Cherry toward the car. Sharon rushed to stop them. You, let her go." Seeing Sharon, the man said to her, "I won't hurt her, I just want to have a proper talk." Sharon looked at Cherry with concern in her eyes, until she saw Cherry nod at her and say, "Sharon, I won't wait with you for Ronald anymore. I need to take care of something first." Sharon nodded and watched as Cherry was ushered into the passenger seat by the man, and the car sped away. Sharon was still worried. She took out her phone and sent a message to Cherry, "Let me know if there's anything." "Okay." At that moment, she received a call from Ronald. "Hey, Sharon, the road's a bit slippery with snow so I got delayed. I'm here now, where are you?" "I'm still at the hotel entrance." "Which entrance?" Just then, Sharon suddenly spotted Ronald's car and said, "Never mind, I'll come find you." Ronald was taken aback. "You saw me?" "Yep." After getting in the car, Ronald handed her a neatly tied bouquet of roses. "These are for you. I know roses might seem a bit cliché, but I saw them on the way and thought of buying them for you." Sharon was momentarily stunned as she accepted the bouquet of flowers. Ronald was dressed in a brown suit today, paired with a white shirt and a neatly tied tie. Looking exceptionally handsome, he appeared very capable, giving off the vibe of a domineering CEO. Sharon looked at the roses in her hand, then at Ronald and said, "You really don't seem like the type who'd give flowers to a girl." Ronald was taken aback. "Then what do I look like? Someone who would give Patek Philippe, Vatran Constantine, or something like that? In short, not someone who'd give flowers and plants." Ronald couldn't help but laugh. "Why would you think that?" Sharon nodded, bringing the flowers to her nose for a sniff, a hint of joy rising in her heart. Because that's exactly what my dad does. My mom always says he's tacky, completely lacking in romance." At that moment, her gaze was drawn to a box. It was an exquisitely crafted package. Ronald noticed the box in her hand and smiled, saying, "See if you like it." Sharon unwrapped it and her eyes lit up. It was a pure green diamond-encrusted watch, incredibly beautiful. Even though she had many different watches at home, she couldn't help but be captivated by this pure green design. "Why are you just like my dad?" Ronald narrowed his eyes slightly, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Seems I'm as tacky as your uncle, so. Do you like it?" Sharon nodded in response. "I love it." Ronald turned around, took out the watch, and put it on Sharon's wrist. After putting it on, his captivating peach blossom eyes gazed at Sharon as he said softly, "This is something I saw at an international auction a few days ago. It's said to be from the collection of a European tycoon. The moment I saw it, I thought of you. I knew it would look beautiful on you. And now that I see it, it truly does. Sharon felt her heart racing uncontrollably. She sensed Ronald's thoughtfulness and saw the deep affection in his eyes as he looked at her. Sharon suddenly spoke up. Ronald, let's get married. Ronald, a faint look of surprise flashed in his eyes. Sharon, are you serious? Sharon hesitated for a moment, just about to speak. Of course I'm serious. Just then, Ronald's phone rang. Ronald looked down, his handsome brows slightly furrowing when he saw the caller's name. Sharon followed his gaze. Duke Cheen. The next moment, Ronald hung up the phone. Seeing Ronald's grave expression, Sharon asked in confusion, "Why didn't you answer?" Ronald looked at Sharon and smiled slightly. "It's not an important call. Why let it disturb our time together?" Hearing Ronald's reply, Sharon felt vaguely uneasy. She couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't as simple as they seemed. The two didn't bring up the topic of marriage again. Ronald started the car and asked, "Sharon, are you free tomorrow? My uncle mentioned there's a ranch near the North Station here. It's supposed to be beautiful with all the snow this time of year. How about we visit Bayshan Ranch and go horseback riding to relax?" Sharon thought for a moment. Tomorrow was Saturday anyway. Her father had given her the day off, so she nodded in agreement. "All right. I'll let the butler know. It's just that the ranch can get quite cold, so you might need to bundle up." Ronald nodded. "I won't let myself freeze." As he drove, he glanced at Sharon's expression in the rearview mirror, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. The next day, the two of them arrived at the ranch by helicopter. From above, the mountaintop was covered in unmelting snow, while the foot of the mountain was a stretch of green grass, swaying in the wind like ocean waves. Sharon couldn't help but sigh. "Spring has come," Ronald softly murmured in agreement. "Yes, even the chill in the air has faded a lot." Half an hour later, the two got off the plane and boarded a jeep. "Young mistress, it's been almost 2 or 3 years since you last came here to ride, hasn't it? Time flies so fast." The speaker was Uncle Liam, who had spent most of his life on this ranch, even dedicating his entire life to the grasslands. Sharon learned to ride horses from him when she was a child. Sharon replied with a smile, "Yes, Uncle Liam, in the blink of an eye, you've grown from a little girl into a young lady. And this must be the boy you told me you really liked, right?" Uncle Liam asked while driving. Sharon turned to look at Ronald, only to unexpectedly meet his profound gaze. For a moment, Sharon didn't know how to respond. Man is not an island, but the fondness was indeed genuine. Suddenly Sharon remembered she had actually brought Ronald here as a child. "Uncle Liam, don't you remember, when I was 10, I brought him here. You said he was too frail to ride spirited horses and would never find a wife." Uncle Liam froze. "Oh my, boys change so much in 18 years, I didn't recognize him at all." "Right," Sharon thought sarcastically to herself, "after more than 10 years, there's no way you'd recognize him even if ghosts helped." "Uncle Liam." "Hello." Ronald nodded slightly, greeting Uncle Liam. Uncle Liam's eyes crinkled with a smile as he replied, "Good, good, good." Ronald heard Uncle Liam say. Sharon had once liked a boy very much, and felt a vague discomfort in her heart. He knew who that man was. It was Kyle, the one she had braved all pressures for, just to bring him before her parents, the man she had been in love with for 5 long years. Every time he thought about it, he felt as if his heart was soaked in ice water, exuding a chilling cold from the inside out. Now, he desperately wanted to know whether Sharon truly liked him or not. Did Sharon agree to be with him because of an arranged family marriage, or because she genuinely felt even a flicker of affection for him? The jeep rumbled over the gravel road and stopped before the fence. The barking of sheepdogs startled egrets into flight, while herds of migrating yaks were faintly visible amidst the waves of grass. "The young mistress has arrived." After getting out of the vehicle, the two made their way to the stables of the ranch. Suddenly, Sharon spotted a strikingly familiar horse, one that looked remarkably like the steed Saxon she had once trained for Ronald back in City J. Puzzled, she turned to Ronald and asked in utter astonishment, "Is that Saxon?" Ronald followed her gaze, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. "Yes, I had him flown here. He's still the same, won't let anyone ride him except you." Sharon paused in surprise. "Really? Then I must take him for a proper ride today." She had trained this horse for a long time, nearly half a year. By all reasoning, even the wildest horse should be tamed in half a year, but Saxon seemed to be a bit different. Then Sharon took Ronald to pick a relatively docile horse. After selecting the horse, Ronald was the first to mount the horse, his movements crisp and efficient. Sharon let out an exclamation of surprise, instantly sparking her competitive spirit. "Not bad, little Ronald. Wanna have a competition?" Sharon patted Saxon's neck and said challengingly, "No way, I won't compete with you." Ronald turned his head to look at her, his eyes containing an unreadable emotion. A gentle breeze brushed against their faces, carrying the fragrance of grass in the air. You're not chickening out, are you? Still the same as when you were little. Sharon used reverse psychology, trying to provoke his competitive spirit. Ronald remained completely unfazed. Reverse psychology won't work on me. Sharon let out a scoffing HMPH, and declared, fine, I'll do it myself. With that, she whipped her horse into a gallop, charging forward with unrestrained abandon. Ronald tightened his reins, watching Sharon's carefree figure recede into the distance, and couldn't help murmuring, Sharon, what kind of feelings do you really have for me? Is it fondness, love, or just convenience? Sharon gradually pulled her reins taut. Turning back only to discover that Ronald was still rooted in place, she circled her horse around and asked Ronald, why aren't you moving? Is the horse uncomfortable to ride? Ronald watched Sharon's figure return, the corners of his eyes crinkling into crescent moons. She's coming. Whatever had been troubling him moments ago suddenly seemed insignificant. The two wandered across the grassland all day until migratory birds streaked across white clouds and twilight enveloped the plains. It wasn't until 10 p.m. that they returned to City B by helicopter. As the car drove back into the city, Sharon spotted that phone call again. Duke Cheen. Ronald hung up again, this time without explanation, silently driving while looking straight ahead. On Sunday evening, Ronald took a flight back to City J, after which Sharon went to Cherry's law firm and was led to the lounge by the receptionist. Ms. Cherry is in a meeting. Ms. Sharon, please wait here for a moment. Sharon nodded and had just taken her seat when she looked up and saw the man who had come looking for Cherry the other day. Through the glass, the man's eyes were tightly shut as he reclined halfway in Cherry's office chair, his brows unconsciously furrowed, revealing deep exhaustion. Sharon texted Cherry, seriously, what's the deal with that guy in your office? Are we still on for dinner tonight? Meanwhile, inside the office, Cherry glanced down at her phone. Maybe another day, my treat. Sharon was taken aback, replied with an okay and left. After that, she also became busy. That evening, Sharon was about to fall asleep when she suddenly received an unfamiliar text message on her phone. She opened it and read, you use your family's wealth and influence to steal other people's boyfriends. Don't you feel guilty? Sharon frowned. Who was this, sending such a message to her? Sharon stroked her phone screen and typed back, Miss, you've sent this to the wrong number, unexpectedly. A reply came through again, it's you I meant to text, I'm David, Ronald's childhood sweetheart, and you actually stopped Ronald from answering my calls. Sharon, her breath caught at the sight of this name, because she had seen it twice before on Ronald's phone. No, miss, are you okay? Besides, I never forbade him from answering your calls. If Ronald really liked you, he would have refused the engagement himself. But he didn't refuse. Doesn't that mean he doesn't like you enough? The other end didn't reply to this message. Sharon took a screenshot of the text and sent it to Ronald. Care to explain? But Ronald never replied, and Sharon stared at her phone screen all night without sleeping. The next morning, 2 massive dark circles loomed around her eyes. She sent another message. Forget it. It was just a business-marriage alliance anyway. If you don't want to talk, then don't. It's not like I care. After a busy morning, during her afternoon shift, Sharon lay drowsily on the office rocking chair when a sudden commotion at the door made her frown slightly. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking echoed. Sharon rubbed her temples and said in a deep voice, come in, President. There's someone outside looking for you. He claims to be your fiancé, and there's a woman with him. I've taken them to the meeting room, the assistant said nervously. Sharon nodded upon hearing this and replied, got it, I'll go out in a bit. Sharon had just arrived at the meeting room door. You've gone too far this time, Ronald said with a slight frown. He was dressed in a sleek black suit that accentuated his tall frame, with a pair of captivating peach blossom eyes. The woman beside him wore a long white dress, carrying the latest HKHJ crocodile bag, her eyes slightly red as she looked at Ronald and said, I just like you. Is it wrong to like you? Ronald replied solemnly, you know, I've always treated you like a sister since we were kids. My feelings for you have never gone beyond sibling affection. I don't believe it. Grandpa always said we were perfect for each other since we were little. You must be trying to protect me, right? I know her family is very wealthy. She's also an only child. Enough, Ronald roared, cutting off the woman's impending words, a profound insult to him. He, Ronald, the esteemed CEO of ZX for several days, who founded his own company at 18, had long since earned more money than he could spend. He was hardly in a position to leech off a woman's family fortune. His pride, both outward and inward, had been trampled into the ground by this childhood neighbor's sister, whom he doted on since they were kids. Sharon stood at the doorway, knocking lightly, her expression icy. Have you two had enough? Ronald turned around and met Sharon's gaze, flustered as he tried to explain. Sharon. Did you hear everything? I can explain, Sharon said with a cold expression, pretending not to care. How do you want to explain? Explain that you don't actually like her. or explain that you didn't get engaged to me just for my family's wealth. Ronald looked at Sharon and saw the indifference in her eyes. His heart felt as if it had been struck hard by something, and he was instantly overwhelmed with frustration. Suddenly, he realized, Sharon didn't love him. When you love someone, your eyes can't hide it. Ronald lowered his gaze, let out a bitter laugh, and hung his head in disappointment. Originally, I wanted to explain to you, but I just realized you don't care at all. Why should I bother? Sharon, you're heartless. With that said, Ronald walked past Sharon and headed to the elevator, such a short distance, yet it drained all his strength. Seeing this, David quickly followed, wiping away her tears with a smile. Ronald, wait for me. She may not like you, but I do. Sharon, watching the man's dejected figure walk away, she suddenly felt as if something had been torn from her chest. She opened her phone and saw the message she'd sent that morning. Forget it, it was just a business marriage alliance anyway. If you don't want to talk about it, then don't. It's not like I care to know. Several new replies had appeared below. Just got back from London last night and woke up, still jet-lagged. Sharon, how could you say something so hurtful? I don't need a business marriage alliance, but I do want to be with you. I'll take what you said earlier as words spoken in anger. I'm bringing David over now to explain everything to you. She's my friend's younger sister. So I've always treated her like one too. Sharon, don't be angry. Sharon looked at the timestamp showing 1 p.m. While it was now 6 p.m., meaning he'd driven for 4 straight hours from City J to City B. Sharon stared at the text message, unable to snap out of it. Had she gone too far with her words? That evening, she called her best friend Cherry about it. Was I too harsh? Sharon, you really hurt him this time. If it were me, I'd never want to see you again. It's that serious. Sharon had barely asked the question when she received a message from Ronald. Let's call off the engagement. I'll talk to your uncle. The moment she saw those words, she felt an unprecedented sense of suffocation, and all sounds faded from her ears. Suddenly, she realized she didn't want, not at all, for things between them to just end like this. Isn't this serious enough? He offered you his sincere heart, and not only did you reject it, you trampled on it twice. He's a CEO, for heaven's sake, who treated you with utmost devotion, only to be doubted by you. Imagine the sky falling. Her best friend Cherry continued to speak. She couldn't take in a single word, feeling as if her heart had been stabbed by something, bleeding profusely. She hadn't actually meant it that way, but in that moment, those were the words that came out. Later, she realized she'd gone too far, but her pride kept her from going after him. Seeing Sharon remain silent for so long, Cherry grew concerned. Sharon, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself. It's really not that serious. Ronald likes you so much. Just go apologize and say it was said in anger. Hearing this, Sharon's dim pupils finally showed a glimmer of light. Yes, to City J, it was her only option now. She wanted to tell Ronald that she liked him very much, that she deeply regretted those thoughtless words she'd said before. Acting on impulse, Sharon hung up before Cherry could react. Since private jets require advanced flight plan applications, Sharon drove a Cullinan straight from the garage, turned on the navigation, and set off on the Jingguang Expressway. On the other side, Ronald, after sending David home, immediately called up his best friend and headed to the bar. His heart ached so intensely, so unbearably, it felt as if it were about to split apart. Now, he only wanted to numb himself with alcohol. At the age of 10, after being separated from Sharon, he realized he had feelings for Sharon, but before he could confess, his mother took him abroad. He kept this affection hidden in his heart for a full 15 years, until he met Sharon again 3 years ago. He thought he finally had a chance, but after asking around, he learned that Sharon already had a boyfriend. He told his father he wanted to see Sharon, and his father set about making arrangements. But the answer he received was that Sharon hadn't returned home for 3 whole years because of a man. He tried to get closer to Sharon by training horses, but was often stung by her cold, distant gaze and rejecting words. At that moment, he envied Kyle. He tried to close off his heart, yet couldn't help wanting to get closer to Sharon. Eventually, Sharon agreed to have dinner with him, agreed to start as friends with him. Inside the bar, amid the clinking of glasses, he held his drink, downing one cup after another. Ronald, drink less. It's just over a woman, with your qualities. What kind of woman couldn't you have? That's right, that's right. His friends, worried he might drink himself into trouble, chimed in to persuade him. Ronald, with red-rimmed eyes, raised his glass again and downed it fiercely. I was the one who called off the engagement first, so why does my heart hurt so much? He felt his heart had already numbed from the pain. Jack and Bobby exchanged glances. Bobby spoke first. He's definitely going to drink himself sick at this rate, Jack suggested. How about we find Ronald a woman? Time and a new love are the best remedies for heartbreak. Time clearly isn't enough here, but as for new love, aren't they everywhere on the streets? Sam smacked Jack's head hard. What the hell, are you crazy or am I? Let him know he'd better not mess with you. Jack gave up. Then what do you suggest? Let him get drunk and then send him home. Stop scheming. Let it be. Sam snatched the empty bottle from Ronald's hand and laughed. Ronald, drinking alone is no fun. I'll keep you company. Count me in, Jack said. Sharon arrived at Ronald's doorstep, knocked, but found no response. She turned to call Ronald's assistant and learned he was at the Jushin VIP club. Hearing the name Jushin, she frowned slightly. It was the very place where she had first uncovered Kyle's identity. Nevertheless, she patiently made her way there. Just as she reached the entrance, she ran into Kyle emerging from inside, along with Manfred by his side. Sharon halted in her tracks. Kyle was dressed in a tailored dark suit, his white shirt slightly unbuttoned to reveal glimpses of collarbone, exuding an aura of aloof elegance. Beside him, Manfred followed closely, the corner of his mouth stained crimson. At the sight of Sharon, he exclaimed in surprise, "Sharon, you're not dead, damn. I thought Kyle was lying." Sharon let her gaze drift between the two men. "Yeah, I'm not dead, a bit disappointed, aren't you?" Kyle frowned slightly at these words, yet a faint glimmer of anticipation stirred within him. He thought Sharon had come for him. "What are you doing here?" Sharon glanced at him. "Of course I'm here to see my fiancé." "Did you really think I came for you? How ridiculous." Kyle's expression darkened, his face as cold as frost. Sharon, is this all you have for me now?" Words that sting. "Did you ever truly love me?" Sharon let out a cold laugh. "Someone like you doesn't deserve to speak of love." With that, Sharon brushed past the two of them and walked inside. The lights of Stellar Club flickered, the air thick with high-end incense that filled Sharon's nostrils. The last time she had been here was months ago. Only then, it had been for Kyle, and now, it was for someone else entirely. The waiter approached her. "Madam, who are you looking for?" "Ronald." The waiter froze slightly. "One moment, I'll make a call." Sharon saw this and said coldly, "No need, I'll find him myself." With that, he went up the stairs. The waitstaff had grown accustomed to seeing Sharon's back by now. Over the years, whenever Mr. Ronald visited Jushin, there were always a few overambitious women who thought they could climb this lofty branch with their beauty, yet without exception, Mr. Ronald had thrown every single one of them out. A waiter muttered to the person beside him, "How long do you think she'll last before Mr. Ronald kicks her out?" The other shook his head. "No idea, but it won't be long." When I went to deliver wine to Director Lee's private room earlier, Mr. Ronald was in an especially foul mood. Sharon searched room after room, finally finding Ronald, only to witness him with a beautiful girl in his left arm and an innocent-looking mature woman in his right. At that moment, she wished she could chop off both his hands. Sharon swung the door open, revealing the full scene inside the private room. She took 2 deep breaths, her heart trembling uncontrollably. "Ronald, you've truly opened my eyes." Ronald blurred his eyes, his gaze unfocused, his usually pale face flushed faintly under the lights as he squinted, trying to make out who stood before him until he saw the face he'd been dreaming of day and night. His first thought was disbelief. How could she possibly come looking for him? "Sharon, no, this can't be real, just an illusion." Ronald gave a bitter smile, tilting his head back before murmuring after a long pause, "My head hurts so much." Sharon grabbed the glass from the table and flung its contents violently at Ronald. "Ronald, are you sober now? You'd better give me a damn explanation." Sharon had driven for 4 hours and searched for him for 3 more, only to be met with this scene. She felt her heart shatter into pieces. Ronald froze, his chest aching with suffocating pain. Staggering to his feet, he caught sight of Sharon before him and pulled her tightly into his embrace. "It's really you, Sharon. Why have you come?" "Wait, are you here to discuss calling off the engagement?" "I don't want to break it, Sharon. Everything I said was just angry words. The truth is, I've liked you since we were children. Can we not cancel the engagement? Even if you don't like me now, I believe one day you'll fall in love with me, right?" His words seemed directed at Sharon, yet also as if he were speaking to himself. Sharon startled, her heart tangled in a dense thicket of emotions. The other 2 people present were also stunned by the situation. Sam was the first to speak. "You must be his wife." "Let me explain. He drank quite a lot tonight and has been incoherent since around 10 o'clock. He absolutely refused to go home. That's why you saw what just happened. Those were all our orders." Sharon lightly steadied Ronald's body, her gaze sweeping over the 4 people present. Ronald's seat had only 1 glass, while their table had 2 each. Clearly, those 2 female companions weren't Ronald's doing. Even so, he shouldn't have done such things while drunk. Embracing women left and right, Sharon clenched her fists. "This engagement is definitely off. Can someone come help him up?" The 2 men froze. Jack said, "Sis-in-law, maybe you should wait until Ronald sobers up before deciding." Sam, that's right, sis-in-law, this isn't a small matter. Though I don't know what conflict you have with Ronald, but when it comes to relationships, it's really not something that can be explained in just a few words. Sharon looked at Ronald. His cheeks slightly flushed, his gaze pitifully fixed on Sharon. His entire appearance suggested he hadn't had time to change clothes. Seeing those moist eyes of his, a pang of heartache suddenly welled up in her chest. After a long pause, she addressed the two. "Help me get him into the car. I'm taking him with me." "Yes. Yes, sister-in-law," Jack and Sam said in unison. Sharon brought Ronald home, or more accurately, to his former residence in City J. Because Ronald was too drunk to even open the door himself, and she couldn't be bothered to ask a drunk man where his keys were. The next day, Ronald woke up with a splitting headache. He shook his head, looked at the unfamiliar ceiling, and his breath caught. He wouldn't have been picked up by someone else, would he? No way. Jack and Bobby would never let anyone take him away. As he walked out of the living room, he saw Sharon sleeping soundly on the sofa, tiptoeing closer. He gazed at Sharon's peaceful sleeping face. When he noticed the photo of Sharon on the table, his heart raced so fast it felt like it might burst from his chest as he realized where he was. This was Sharon's house in City J. He gazed motionlessly at Sharon, his eyes overflowing with tenderness. Sharon had placed Ronald in the master bedroom as soon as she returned last night. She made do with sleeping on the couch for the night. The next morning, she awoke to meet an extraordinarily gentle gaze. Ronald's eyes resembled the deepest lake waters, brimming with affection as if about to overflow. She looked at Ronald, her heart tightening with a suffocating feeling. "You're awake." Ronald nodded like a child who'd done something wrong. "Why are you here?" Sharon gave him a cold look upon hearing this. "Why am I here? Would you rather I didn't come, so you could have your way and call off the engagement?" "That's not true, Sharon. I was just speaking in anger. You never cared about me at all. If you had even the slightest regard for me, you wouldn't have said such hurtful things." Ronald lowered his eyelids, his long lashes veiling the gloom in his eyes. Sharon felt a pang in her chest. For some reason, she couldn't bear to see Ronald upset. But last night's scene was like a needle piercing his heart. "Did you forget that if I didn't care about you, would I have driven all the way to City J at night only to see you with your arms around others?" Ronald's pupils suddenly brightened upon hearing this. What did you say? You care about me?" It was as if he only heard that one sentence, completely ignoring the part about embracing others. Sharon was practically laughing in exasperation. "Aren't you going to explain yesterday's little left and right embrace situation?" Ronald froze, about to explain when he realized he couldn't remember a single thing about yesterday's events. All he remembered was drinking non-stop, trying to numb his already shattered heart with alcohol. I was wrong, Sharon, please forgive me." "Okay." Sharon looked at him, her chest trembling uncontrollably. "Have you really forgotten everything? Am I the only one who cares? Is that it?" Ronald pulled Sharon into his embrace. "I'm sorry, I won't drink that much next time." "Then does what you said yesterday about ending our marriage still count?" "Of course it doesn't. That was just me being angry. Please indulge me this once. Don't take it to heart." "All right, Sharon." Sharon suddenly felt her heart soften. "All right, just this once. There won't be a next time." Ronald seized the opportunity to pull her into his embrace, planting a restrained kiss at the corner of her lips before leaning down to whisper against her earlobe. "I swear, absolutely no next time. If there is, may I never rise again." The end.